What's
Hello,
up,
Internet.
everybody? It is Zach, the Dark Conservatarian, and I'm here with some loudmouth on the internet who's going to share us his opinion. Say hi, loudmouth.
Hi there.
And of course, after a long wait, we finally have him back. We have ourselves the Reckless Trucker. Say hi, Trucker.
Hi, Trucker. How are you doing?
I don't know. How is Trucker doing? Is he good?
No.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
terrible.
I'm good.
You know, I'm not gonna lie. For a while now, I had a little bit of this idea of having a podcast named Dark Mouth. It being like a show that features both myself and, of course, Loudmouth here, and Dark Mouth. That seems to be like the most punchy one of them all. But if we was to have Reckless Trucker on as like a third ringer for the for said podcast idea, we could call it the Reckless Dark Mouth or something like that.
That'll work.
Oh, man, I think that's putting too much weight on my name. But sure.
I mean, come on, Trucker. You gotta admit that sometimes you get yourselves more in the heat of things than me and Loudmouth do, especially there on Twitter when it comes to arguments and so forth.
Oh yeah, no, I would always get the dumbest ones. It's fun. It's real dumb though.
Like you remember that debate that was originally for Night Shift, but then you had with the Cult of Ham, and you were like the one that carried the weight that whole live stream, made it all the worth watching.
No, that was real fun. I had gotten real sick of Ham pretending to be like a centrist. And that's all. That's what that was all about. Like I was pissed off at him constantly lying to us about that shit.
Let's get on topic.
That
Inside Out 2, everybody. Darkon, what was your opinion of Inside Out 2?
My thoughts, I thought it was pretty good. The original Inside Out, I thought was about a 7 out of 10, and I think this one is like slightly inferior to the first one, but still about a 7 out of 10. If I had to get super specific, it'd probably be a 7 out of 10, bordering on a 6. And Inside Out 1 would be like a solid 7.5 out of 10, maybe, but solidly in the 7 ranges. I liked it a lot. Like, I posted my own review of it on Facebook, and you might have seen my video review that I posted here on my secondary channel. And it basically is the same thoughts. Anxiety was the worst character in my book. Like, there are some other people that kind of liked Anxiety for some weird reason, but
You're not
Anxiety.
really meant to like Anxiety. Anxiety is kind of like Death from Puss in Boots 2. It's kind of just like you don't really like that the character's there, but you understand that's just an inevitable part of life.
Well, here's the difference. Death actually added a bit of a coolness factor to Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, whereas Anxiety was just straight up freaking annoying.
Well, I mean, Anxiety is supposed to be annoying, though. That's kind of the point of Anxiety, and the way it basically has all these like neurons in Riley's brain. Anxiety has them like draw up a bunch of possible futures for her to be afraid of. That is
of course.
pretty much exactly how Anxiety is. That is essentially, though. You could debate that, is anxiety really an emotion in and of itself? Anxiety is really just fear of the future. It's more complex variation of fear.
Which we'll get into those.
So this is gonna.
Go
This
ahead,
is gonna sound horribly clippable, but like I don't know if you ever talked to a nervous 14-year-old girl. They are horribly annoying.
Right. So
Yeah,
things I want to say to your point, if I can, Loudmouth. Like, yeah, I disliked Anxiety as a character, but it was one of those characters that you really hate, that you love to hate, but also service the story. Like, I'm not going to say that Anxiety was a bad character and that she was absolutely worthless and shouldn't have been in the story in the same way that people say about Jar Jar Binks and the Phantom Menace. But she's like a dislikable character in the same way of Denethor from Lord of the Rings. In the way that Denethor is an absolutely detestable character, but a detestable character that still services the story. But all the same, and as far as what you said about is anxiety really an emotion? Well, kind of is, but even if it was, it's like a subcategorical emotion of fear, which I thought was a little bit of a shoehornedness about this second movie. The fact that they had to pull their ass these extra emotions that are really just closer
that
related
I
to
would
the
say is the
main five
big flaw
emotions.
in this movie is we're to believe that Riley only got the emotions of envy, of boredom, of embarrassment when she turned 13 and didn't feel those things before that. Bullshit. Kids get bored. Kids get incredibly envious. In fact, they're more envious than anyone. So where were these characters in the last movie?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I like the idea of like Riley evolving emotionally, having more complex emotions. But it seems like the way they're going to go about it will be really ham-fisted and crap, just because it's hard to do that in any way that is reasonable.
Yeah,
well, I did like them bringing in nostalgia briefly. Like, oh, we don't need you till later, because nostalgia is genuinely an emotion that children don't feel or understand. It's not something that really appears in us till like later in our teens, maybe.
Yeah, see, that one makes perfect sense, but go on.
But envy and boredom, kids feel that at a very young age.
Yeah, and a couple
things
I
was going to say, I've seen toddlers slap the shit out of each other because one got a cookie and the other didn't.
Yeah, of course. And a couple things I want to say on regards to that, Loudmouth. The fact that they added these characters like so late in the game does add a little bit of the plot hole and a little bit of a weak part of the world building, in the fact that if these emotions supposedly only come in at puberty, which, as you logically pointed out, is complete bullshit. Kids would get bored and envious, of course. But if supposedly they only really come into play when you become an adult, why did we not see in the heads of the adults, both the mom and dad mainly, their like 4 other emotions? But they did not show them on screen at all. And also another thing about envy is that was another character that really was. I don't know if I would say that I necessarily dislike Envy as a character, but Envy was completely unserviceable in the story. Like, it seemed that Envy wasn't even really that envious, not in the truest sense of the word, and a person being bitter about the fact that somebody has something that they themselves don't. It was just that Envy as a character in this movie was just complimentary of other people and the fact that they had stuff that they didn't.
Well,
not
actually,
like saying, we must steal that.
Yeah, I wish I was strong enough. I wish I was tall enough to grab that. Oh, I wish I had that. Or she does sometimes say stuff like that. So yeah.
But that's about it.
So she likes her envy sounds like crappy flirting.
Yeah,
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What other emotions is missing? Since Riley's turning 13, going through puberty, wouldn't lust be an emotion now? But that would definitely push the movie's rating.
No.
And I'll get to the lust point here in a little bit. But what about pride? Wouldn't pride be another emotion that would come into play?
Pride, yes, pride would be one. But I'm saying though they couldn't do that, obviously, because if they did, it would definitely push this movie beyond PG.
Right. Although
pride and what about like hate? Can we see a hateful, like racist Riley? That would be really fun.
I would think that hate or something like that. Yeah, exactly. What I was about to say, Loudmouth.
Anger, of course, is a character, but I guess hate would come from when anger is like super strong. But then again, hatred isn't really the same as anger per se.
Yeah.
No, I always thought hatred was categorized differently, like true hatred is.
But on the point about lust, I guess this is something that we ought to say in all fairness to anybody who hasn't seen the movie. There is no gay shit in this, okay? Despite of what the fan theories might be from some of the LGBT activists on Twitter or whatever, what they theorize, it isn't explicitly shown on the screen. I mean, yeah, there might be some stuff that kind of edges on that, but at the same time,
where you see that Riley like has like like idols in her brain of like male celebrities she's attracted to, which makes sense. That is exactly what a teenage girl would.
Actually, yeah, you're right.
Look.
Yeah, Mount Crushmore, as it was called. That would actually
Mount
be evidence of the
Crushmore.
opposite. Yeah, exactly.
That was pretty. Yeah.
Pun
No, look.
intended.
This
But
might
wait,
might be a kids show, but I desperately need it to be about me licking Muff as a woman.
What?
It might be a kids show, but I desperately need it to be about me licking Muff as a woman. Yeah, no, I'm making fun of the fans who always want it to be about themselves and about gay stuff when it never is.
Oh, right. Of course.
Well, one of the jokes that everyone made even after the first Inside Out came out is that if Inside Out were in the mind of an adult man instead of a little girl, this movie would be a porno.
Right. Yeah. I also wanted to add very quickly that to expound on that, Mount Crushmore would actually be evidence of the opposite. In fact, that Riley isn't a lesbian, at least not yet. Anyways, definitely not in this movie in particular.
No, she was obsessed with those other girls because she was like obsessed with her social standing, which is incredibly accurate to the female psyche, and is why this movie is being successful. Women are obsessed with their social standing. They are obsessed with social status.
And I gotta ask, with that point being made, I gotta ask: did the movie provide like a good moral lesson? Did it provide like a good roadmap for girls navigating these issues?
Kind of a little bit. The main lesson of this message of this movie would be don't let anxiety control you, which is at its core a good message. But for me personally, the reason this movie did not resonate with me as much as the first movie did is the first movie's message about the importance of sadness was a very important one that kind of felt more gender neutral. So me as a man could kind of relate to it more. Whereas because Riley's a teenager now, this feels more geared specifically towards issues that girls go to, which is not a bad thing because it is set in the mind of a young girl. But But I actually think that's the reason why this movie is so successful, because some data on this movie is interesting. It's lighting up the box office, and it looks like it's rocketing towards $1 billion. And
holy crap, really?
Yeah, 50% of this movie's attendees they found were grown women. I mean, many of them were mothers bringing their children, but a lot of single women have gone to see this movie without any kids. And that says something to me that this movie particularly seems to have struck a chord with the female audience.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is that. I can definitely see that, especially for the fact that there is like a whole lot of female characters. Like the only male character that we can see play any considerable part is the dad, and plus whatever male portrayals of the characters inside Riley's head are. But I would kind of disagree with the idea that it's like a message that only would be relatable to women, because I mean, I personally,
I didn't say only relatable to women. I said more relatable to women than it would be for men.
I don't even know if I would like agree with the idea that's more relatable to women, but I guess because of the surface level stuff that they put on it being relating more to like a girls' hockey club, sure. But I just wanted to say that I myself, for example, I've kind of obsessed a little bit too much about how people think about me throughout most of my 20s, and that's another reason as to why that I hated the character of anxiety, that being the emotion that anxiety represents, that being, of course, anxiety, because it's something that I've like heavily struggled with throughout a good chunk of my 20s. I'm afraid that this friend doesn't like me anymore. I better like be super careful walking on eggshells, or ask them what's the problem, or whatever else have you, you know?
Well, all humans are like kind of obsessed with social standing because we're social primates. But I think like an obsession with social status is much more rooted in the female brain than the male brain. Like particularly among making friends or in picking mates, women seem to care obsessively about social standing of friends relations and mates much more than men do.
I would say likely, just to bridge the gap here, I would say likely men care about it just as much. It does give access to mates and power, money.
Yeah.
But the way men go about it is a lot more like action. It's a lot more like trophy oriented and like, look at what I did and physically got. These are my social standing rewards. Look at them. Whereas women are much more concerned about upkeeping the internal social circle.
Hmm.
And that keeps up a lot more internal stress in women, usually when it comes to social things. At least that's my understanding of men and women and social skills.
You see that in the movie because, like, one of the main things is anxiety kind of takes control of Riley, and then it invents like a ridiculous amount of plausible scenarios for the future, which essentially pairs. But anxiety
Yeah.
doesn't really see herself as a villain; she sees herself as acting in Riley's best interest. Like, in order to prevent all these things from happening, Riley has to prepare for the future. But, and there's
I
truth
would
to that.
almost straight be willing to straight up call anxiety a villain, like regardless of the redemption arc that she goes through towards the end of the movie. Mostly because of the fact that she like locks up the other 5 emotions and actively like throws them out. I mean, as tyrannical and controlling as people might say that Joy was in the first one, at least she did not like take sadness and just throw her completely in the back of the mind in the vault or something else
Yeah,
like that.
I like that term. We're all bottled up emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a
That's
real
little
cute
bit-
commercial.
That joke actually was pretty funny, and I like the secrets in the back of Riley's brain being like embarrassing, like childhood stuff. Like one of them's a character from a children's show, and I'm like, Riley's secret is that she still likes me.
Oh yeah. Freaking Bluefy. That character was an absolute hoot. Mostly because of the fact that I saw a whole bunch of comparisons to Dora the Explorer in this character, and I absolutely hated Dora the Explorer whenever I would notice my siblings watching this series back when we were all younger. And to see a character used as a parody of Dora and the fact that the character Anger would like react so viscerally against both him and his buddy Pouchy was just so cathartic for me at the same time. It just all culminated in just grade A comedy in my book. I love that part.
All right, so anger reacted, angrily to the secret that his human still likes that show.
No, to the character Bluefy himself, actually. Not
Well,
to the
that
fact
I
that
would say,
Riley secretly liked the character, but just the fact that this character existed at all.
no, that's really funny because like secretly liking a kids show and then like violently reacting when the kids show is brought up sounds very fitting for like what a 13-year-old, 14-year-old would do.
Yeah.
That's
Actually,
pretty
you know
cute.
The first one I liked how like one of the people in the back of their brain constantly send up this like old jingle for a Doublemint gum commercial to just kind of mess with them. Hey, we send this one up to headquarters just to mess with them all the time. Like that's pretty fun.
That's how you get a song. That's why a song gets stuck in your head out of nowhere 3 months after hearing it.
Yeah, I love that.
You know what?
It's worth noting that the director of Inside Out 2 is a director who's never directed anything before. She's like worked with Pixar for on a few other movies, so she's been with the company for a while, but this is like her first time directing. Pete Docter, who directed the first Inside Out, as well as Up, as well as Soul, didn't direct this movie. He was only an executive producer. He was still involved. He's still there, but he wasn't. He didn't direct.
Yeah, which goes to show that there is still some love and care put into this movie, and it's nice to see that the director respected the original source material. I mean, she even did something a little bit extra that Pete Docter didn't do, and that was give Anger actually something to do other than just complain. Like there was the one part of where that Joy, being her usual toxic positivity type of self, always being, as Anger put it, delusionally happy and positive about every situation, and Anger calls her out for it. And I was just all like, "Oh shit!" to the part of when that she gave this one overly serious look, reacting to him calling her delusional, and then she has this emotional breakdown, and it was nice to see of how that Anger would just then like it was kind of uncharacteristic of him, but it's nice to see as well that he was like able to also pick her up and like support her emotionally a bit. And honestly, I would have liked this movie a lot better if only there was a whole lot more of these kinds of interactions, or maybe even some head buttings between anger and joy directly. Like aside from maybe sadness, you cannot get two ever more diametrically opposed emotions than joy and anger. And so to have been able to have seen them two like have some kind of love-hate relationship throughout the movie would just made it a lot better. I mean, but they didn't.
Well, I would say
So
the opposite of joy is not anger; it would be sadness. Hence, why the two of them were kind of the central protagonists of the first movie.
Now, that's
maybe
true, but you could, well, yeah, but yeah, it would be interesting to see anger become like a bit of a villainous character in a way. Ooh, maybe when she's like 16 and having boyfriend issues.
I don't think he needs to be like a villainous character, although I mean I can see that possibly being happening. In theory, it would just be a matter. I mean, I'm open to the possibility. It would just be a big question of execution. Like, are they going to do complete 180 about one thing about anger the character, or are they going to have some kind of logical, coherent build up an arc to where that anger goes through some kind of hero to
Well, I
villain
don't
kind of
even.
arc.
Well, I don't even mean a villain arc. Just like him messing things up horribly, being like the antagonist in general.
He was kind of that way
But
in Inside Out 1, though, let's be honest.
yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, he's obsessed with
Big
making
thing.
sure everything's fair. That's kind of his deal. Just like Fear is obsessed with keeping Riley safe, Anger's primarily concerned with things being fair.
You know what? Speaking of
Yeah.
fairness, maybe that would be the where the subcategorical emotion of envy would fall under, is like anger in a way. But anyway, side notes aside, what else can be said about this movie? I mean,
Definitely.
I
I guess it's definitely Pixar's best movie since Soul. I would say. Because honestly, that was another
better than
thing about
Luca.
this conversation. Pixar has definitely had a pretty massive decline, both in box office receipts and quality over the last few years. And it really started all with John Lasseter's ridiculous firing. Pretty much, you just look up the circumstances of that bullshit, and you can see a microcosm of everything that's wrong with the Walt Disney Corporation today. The reasons why he was fired from the company after all he did for the company were complete bullshit. And after he left, a few other people left with him to like Skydance Pictures. And since then, you can see kind of a gradual decline in Pixar's quality.
You know what? That kind of makes me wonder as to why that exactly Schaefer production hates John Lasseter. I mean, maybe there's something political about it because Schaefer is a bit of a lefty, and maybe John Lasseter is just a tad too right leaning for him
Well,
or something.
it's less that he's right leaning and kind of the man's a perfectionist. He definitely has his own vision, and obviously, when a man is a perfectionist and really has strong views of creative direction, that will inevitably butt heads with other creative people. That doesn't. I'm not saying Lasseter is like a perfect guy who's never made mistakes or his vision is always right, but I'm just saying the way he was forced out of the company there, like it was total BS. But
Red Feather says in the chat, "Oh, what if anger and anxiety have an affair?" Just kidding. Well, that was kind of already flirted with between fear and anxiety at a couple tiny parts in this movie.
That's what.
There is something
Really?
Nightshift 10,000 says, and on that note, if Inside Out 3 doesn't have a new emotion called libido that makes her a young horn dog, then I'll be massively surprised.
That's what I was saying earlier.
And on that note, I also want to say, an interesting character in this movie was the Dark Secret character. Like, he wasn't there for long at all, but he was there just enough to get people wondering about him and kind of fan theorizing. At least me, anyways. Like, what if that deep dark secret of Riley? I don't know.
I don't know.
It could be anything.
Maybe it could be that Riley did something very bad, like to a friend of hers, 8 years old, but no one. Like maybe she did something bad, but somebody else took the blame, and she's holding on to and she has the guilt of it in the back of her mind, but she suppressed it so much that even her emotions
Right.
don't know about it.
Yeah, maybe, and maybe that could
She-
have a bit of a play in Inside Out 3. As Inside Out 3, she's like going into college and she has to like I don't know see a therapist. That would be kind of interesting to see actually. In Inside Out 3, Dark Secret comes out. She is suffering even more emotional turmoil more than ever before, as she's like an actual adult now at this point, to the point of where that she has to see a therapist. And what more of a character relating to the subject of emotions, that
Yeah.
being what Inside Out has always
Yeah,
been about,
you
than
introduce guilt.
throwing in a therapist side character that Riley has to talk to.
Red
That'd be interesting.
Oh man, you know what? Before the Dark Secret comes out, you could have the therapist reminder of that imaginary friend character from the first movie too. It's kind of like a little leak of like, ooh, memories are being remembered.
Bing
Yeah,
bong.
like I could just Bing Bong. Yeah, I could just
Bing
imagine imagine Inside Out 3 being the most adult oriented one of the Inside Out trilogy, in the same way that Cars 3 was the most adult oriented of the entire Cars trilogy. That'd be
Oh, the
interesting.
best example for a movie series that grows with its audience would be like How to Train Your Dragon or Harry Potter. They both did real good.
Yeah. I just gotta say, Inside Out 2 is definitely a very hysterical romp. Like, especially getting off the back of watching Turning Red for the first time ever in recent weeks, which isn't it's actually one of the least funny movies in my book in all of Pixar's category
Yeah, honestly,
catalog,
Turning
and
Red is
even like
bottom tier for Pixar. I get what the movie was trying to do, but I just don't think it did it well. Though Pixar's all-time worst movie that they've made is definitely Lightyear.
Lightyear.
Oh yeah,
Okay, we'll
Lightyear is
get into that in
absolutely
a.
Pixar's worst movie.
Which, in that case, I think if we have nothing else to say about Inside Out 2, maybe we'll get more into Pixar's filmography.
Yeah.
Do we have anything more to say about Inside Out 2?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but
Oh, I wanted to ask, how are the new emotions like born or whatever?
they just kind of break into headquarters, like a wrecking ball hits headquarters, and then all of a sudden, like all these new emotions just kind of pop in.
Yeah, they kind of appear literally out of nowhere.
Oh, Night Shift's at it's a Red Feathers asking if Pixar did Coco. Yes, they did, and that's honestly one of their best movies they've made over their like 3 decades.
I would have.
Coco's amazing.
Red Feather. There is one other thing I want to touch on with. There's like one other thing that I want to touch on with the Inside Out 2 movie that Red Feather kind of mentions here. That is, oh yeah, because the imaginary friend died. And honestly, that's probably one of the biggest reasons why Inside Out, the first one, it kind of edges out Inside Out 2 a bit, is because Inside Out 2 did not have Bing Bong. And Bing Bong was like at least high up there, if not the best character in all of Inside Out. And I think that he even outdoes most to all of the news side characters in the second one.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I'm glad they didn't bring him back because it would have undermined the previous movie if they had.
Yes. Heck yes. I completely agree.
No, unless you have some mechanism, like I thought of, like a therapist, like you brought in the idea of a therapist. Yeah, bringing a character, essentially back from the dead is still ridiculous. You gotta have a really good excuse for that.
Yeah, someone else happens to mention Bing Bong, and then that he reappears in Riley's head or something like that. Although I'm glad that if this theory that we're talking about lines up correctly, I'm glad that they're saving it for Inside Out 3. That is, if they are even saving it for Inside Out 3, instead of like pulling him completely out of their ass for Inside Out 2. At the very least, anyways. Although then again, if Inside Out 3 does come around and they bring back Bing Bong, that would make some of us older gents who have grew up with Pixar longer than Generation Z or Generation Alpha and be thinking, oh man, that makes Inside Out 1 less impactful.
It might. Like, I always wait to see the story, but it very well might do that.
Actually, maybe Bing Bong can be mentioned as a memory without being revived as a character, an active character in Riley's head. And
Right, like there will be a memory of the character in a way, something. But now I think there will definitely be another movie because, like, they're desperate for franchises that make money right now.
No, the worst thing Disney has done yet is the Acolytes as Night Shift 10,000.
I mean, I didn't say that Lightyear was the worst thing that the Walt Disney corporate conglomerate has ever made. Obviously, there's a lot of worse movies. I've said that the worst genuine Pixar movie that they've ever done was Lightyear.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe if I was to give Cars 2 a rewatch, maybe I would come to agree with that. But anyway, everyone was apparently thinking Riley's dark secret was that she was gay, says Night Shift. And that could be a possibility, but it would be a matter of execution. If they're being like overly preachy with the gay stuff, in a plausible Inside Out 3, then it's gonna just be kind of cringe.
I mean, that is one of the reasons Lightyear was a flop. So so they were probably smart to avoid that.
Yeah, well, I do find it funny when people are like, "Oh my God, straight people don't want to watch gay stuff. You bigots." It's like, okay, no.
Well, I mean, straight people are fine with a good movie if one of the characters happens to be gay. Usually, they don't care. But if that's all the movie's about, no one wants to see it. Well,
yeah, honestly.
What was it? That movie Bros is a great example. There was a great review on it, and it showed just how utterly delusional the filmmakers are. Why the hell would they think that straight men throughout the country who don't even want to watch straight romantic comedies would want to watch a gay romantic comedy? I don't get it.
Yeah. Also,
yeah, I know, and that's what I mean. Is like if the content itself, if the core of the content is gay. Like if all you are bringing is gayness as content, no one's going to want to watch that except for gay people.
Which
and weirdos who think it's their political duty.
Right. Literally every single conversation. I haven't seen the whole movie, but I've watched a couple reviews of it. Literally every single conversation in the movie is about being gay. The movie is about nothing else. And yet they are shocked that straight people didn't line up to see it, and the movie was a box office bomb. I'm like, duh.
Honestly, I would be super disturbed if even a movie was talking about nothing but putting the P and the V. Equally speaking.
Imagine if that was the entire movie and there was nothing else in it.
Talk about 50 Shades of Grey.
It's called Two Broke Girls, and only the trashiest people you know like it.
Right.
So one thing that I want to bring on about this point, and then we can move on, is an example I think of, a good example I can think of personally, as far as like casual, actually well executed gay representation, would have to be Tick Tick Boom. I haven't seen the movie like all through every single minute of it straight, but there is a gay character in it that is kind of fruity, not trying to be like homophobic or anything by saying that, but it's just the way that he acts and everything. But he isn't having like conversations every turn about how gay he is, unlike how they did with the son in Strange World. But there is like something that kind of goes happening later in the story that is key to the gayness of the character, is that he has found out to have caught AIDS. So, and it adds a little bit of poignant drama in the movie. At least from what I remember vaguely about the movie. So just want to put that example out there.
Right. No, that's what I mean too. There is the core of the content itself.
Well, definitely some of the controversy over it definitely did harm Lightyear, though. The fact that it does have like a lesbian couple who are characters in that movie, and people are saying. And it ended up losing $100 million at the box office. And it was far from Lightyear's biggest problem as a movie, far from it. But I do think actually contributed to it being a flop, particularly since it came right after Disney stupidly waded into that controversy in Florida with DeSantis. And then they dropped their lawsuit just very recently against DeSantis completely. So Can I please invite every moron who told me on Twitter that Disney is so big and their lawyers are so good that they're completely unbeatable? I kindly invite all of you to bend over and kiss my ass.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it is a terrible movie. Like, Schaefer's
But
production, he did his go on, Trucker.
I was gonna say it's not so much that people, although there was some of that, where people are like, they're gays in the scene for 1 second, therefore I don't like the movie. There was some of that for
Yeah.
sure. But
There
it's
was
more
some
that
of that,
Disney
but it
was being, but it's the culmination of Disney being weird about gayness and kids.
Yeah.
People are like, and you hear from the left all the time, why do you gotta be weird? Why is it weird to be gay with kids? It's like, well, it's weird to be straight with kids, buddy.
Yeah. I would not want some stranger. I would not want some stranger dude to talk to my daughter about how you put the P in the V.
Yeah, but like I'm saying, yeah. South Park made it a meme. Now they have like the Cartman version of Kathleen Kennedy now saying, "Put a chick in it and make her gay."
Make her gay.
That is kind of what the character was, but yeah. About Lightyear. So I always knew from the very get-go of how much they had butchered Zurg, and that Zurg wasn't even technically a character in this movie. Like, Zurg was just a mech suit of a future iteration of Buzz, and so it made it.
And may I say that may be the worst plot twist since Iron Man 3.
But there was like
I think.
Yeah, but there was also another facet about that Schaefer's actually recently pointed out when he did a ranking of all the Pixar villains. He got touching on about Buzz Lightyear, the protagonist's motivation as well, about how it doesn't make any sense. Like, Buzz is just unable to let go of his original motivation, and that is to get everyone home, even though that literally everyone else who was on that colony did not care. In fact, they were like perfectly satisfied with their colony on there. So the fact that Buzz Lightyear has this dread is rather unearned. He did not have any real reason to feel dread, or much less to keep on repeatedly pursuing to try and test out the warp drive so as he can officially get everybody back to Earth or whatever.
But I'd say the biggest sin that Lightyear commits is it does not feel like a Buzz Lightyear movie. There already was a Buzz Lightyear movie made back in the year 2000. It was a direct-to-video movie that Pixar sponsored, but was mostly made by Disney Toon Studios.
Yeah,
called Buzz Lightyear Star Command, and that one fit the origins of the toy Buzz Lightyear much, 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 much better than Lightyear did 22 years later.
Lightyear!
Curse you, Buzz Lightyear!
Yeah.
Yeah, he specifically says in Toy Story his arch nemesis Zurg was evil Emperor Zurg, meaning he was like some space emperor of some twisted planet, and that's exactly what the Wayne Knight version of Zurg is in Buzz Lightyear Star Command. Is he an intimidating villain? No. Do you take him seriously, or is he complex? Hell no. But he's like just a quintessential Saturday morning cartoon villain.
He's supposed to be entertaining, and yet they played him way too serious in the Lightyear movie.
Oh yeah.
It seems to me real quick. It seems to me like this was their idea. Like, we need a stupid, goofy twist of "I am your father," and this was their idea. And this is what happens when you come up with a plot twist without a proper, you didn't get there organically. That's my theory.
The whole "I am your father" thing from Toy Story 2, it was just a dumb Star Wars joke. It was not meant to lead into anything.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
Now it seems like they were trying to make a joke about that and just screwed the whole. Now you're saying that Buzz can be evil. It's like, what the fuck? It's Buzz.
Well,
that's another thing. That's another thing about the. May I, Loudmouth? That's another thing about the Lightyear movie is that Buzz was not even really alluded to have any roots of being able to be evil technically in the Lightyear movie. It was another problem about the execution of it all.
I was going to say that in the original Buzz Lightyear Star Command show, there is an evil Buzz Lightyear. There's a there's an episode where there's a mirror universe where there's an alternate version of Buzz with a beard who's evil.
That could have worked out a shit tons better.
Yeah, but that's just a corny sci-fi plot as you'd expect. And there's a good joke they actually make out of that, because there's this guy in a mask who's doing things, and people suspect that Buzz might be responsible. So the two characters bet that Buzz Lightyear is the one doing it, and it turned out to be the evil Buzz Lightyear. He says, "Well, I guess I win my bet." "No, you didn't. It wasn't Buzz." "Yeah, it was. But his first name's Buzz, last name's Lightyear. Therefore, I win."
Also, I wanted to point out this meme that I post or reposted a year or two ago. It's related to Zurg. Buzz is all like, "You pulled some evil deeds in the past." Nova is all like, "But kidnapping innocent politicians," and Zurg is all like, "Innocent politicians? Don't be oxymoronic." And that is like perfect. It's like I want to see Zurg become like another meme character in meme culture, in the same way that Senator Armstrong, despite being a villain, has some sympathetic things to him. Whereas a Zurg in this example, it's like, yeah, he's an evil dick, but at the same time, he has one sympathetic thing about him: politicians are evil, and to call them innocent is oxymoronic.
That's funny. And
that he's goofily dunking on his victims while they're actively being kidnapped. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, Zurg was he was voiced by Wayne Knight, Newman from Seinfeld. Newman. One of my favorite memes recently is when those student protesters walked out on Jerry Seinfeld during this thing. The Babylon Bee did a joke that said "leader of the protest resistance" named, and it's a picture of Newman.
But yeah. Go on.
Oh, I was about to say, so looking at my tier maker list right here, obviously, not only do I have each movie in the category that I think that they fit in, that being perfect at the top, excellent in the second, good in the third, and substandard being the fourth, and just outright bad being in the fifth category. But aside from that, I have them in a
doesn't have Coco at the top is invalid.
Oh, come on! Don't dismiss my list so quickly.
Got it.
You clearly just hate Mexicans.
Oh yeah. I keep on race baiting that. Hey, I know of how that
you don't like Dora the Explorer. You don't like Coco. You're going straight to Mexican hell.
Hey, look at the category. I have it in, you dick. I have it in the good category. I do not have it in the bad or even the substandard category. And I know that you're like a fourth Mexican yourself, but you're still white. All right. Look at yourself. But the question that I wanted to ask was, why is it? So you put Lightyear more like here, Loudmouth. I just wanted to ask, why is it that movies like Cars 2 or any other movie, or just for starters, what makes Cars 2 slightly better than that of Lightyear?
Cars 2 is basically just kind of a pointless, silly kids movie that didn't really have much to it or have much themes or meat for an adult audience, but it works as kind of a fun, pointless little children's movie. Whereas Lightyear doesn't even work for that because it's kind of dull and sappy at times. It tries to do the stupid thing with that Interstellar did with the tragic implications of general relativity. And that's all fine for science fiction. I'm all for that, but it didn't fit a Buzz Lightyear movie at all.
Fair, and I guess I do have to take into account, there was a video that I watched a while ago that said that The Incredibles duology is both the best and the worst of all Pixar. And there's one point where he said that Cars 2 might be bad, but at least Cars 2 did not butcher its original characters like Mater and Lightning McQueen, whereas The Incredibles 2, he said that it butchered Bob Parr, which there might be more of a point to be made.
I don't see how it did.
Well, okay. The point that I was going to make, though, applying that to Lightyear, there is more of a point to be made that Lightyear does butcher its core character, and even its villain, for that matter, more than Cars 2 butchered any character. And making Buzz Lightyear look like a weak, overly serious pussy, making Zurg look like an overly serious, boring excuse of a villain, all that stuff. So maybe with further thought, I could see myself hating Lightyear more than Cars 2. But my thing with Lightyear is, I guess I'm a little bit of a sucker for sci-fi movies, for starters. And secondly, I also really like the old lady with that attitude. I always wanted to be able to possess a gun, but could not because she was too afraid to violate her parole. But then ultimately, she does have to violate it at the end, the climax. And also, Socks the cat was a pretty decent character too, pretty classy and witty and all that stuff.
I don't think Lightyear is a terrible movie. I said it's the worst Pixar movie, but generally, Pixar's movies in general are so good that being the worst Pixar movie, you're still probably just going to be pretty mediocre. Like, I'd give Lightyear like a 5 out of 10 as a movie. Like, it's not terrible.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous movie to look at. It has some really good production design. It had a few really good ideas, even if they weren't all executed all that well, and some interesting side characters. I'm not going to say it's a terrible movie. I'm just saying it's the weakest Pixar movie because it failed as a Buzz Lightyear movie.
That's funny that you rank it a 5 out of 10 because I call Lightyear a 4, if not a 3 out of 10, and I call Cars 2 like a 2 out of 10 at best.
In a world where the Minions movies exist, I can't be that harsh on it.
Yeah. Also, I think Loudmouth's giving a lot more. I think Loud's giving a lot more credence towards it just not being a incompetent movie as far as like the filming itself goes. Because for me personally, when you get down to the 2-star range, like you start talking about some like the room level filmography. You know what I mean?
Because honestly, Lightyear's better than like half of Illumination Entertainment's movies, so I can't be that harsh on it just for that.
Right, and like a 2-star ranking is really bad. That's a movie where that's a movie where the out of 10,
it would be a 4 out of 10.
Oh,
well, I just suffer watching Boss Baby 2, and honestly, I wanted to pull my eyes out in a couple scenes, so I have to be like less harsh on Lightyear just for that, just because it's so much better than a lot of shit I've seen.
Real quick,
Fair enough.
If I can I touch on Incredibles real quick? Because it's always weird to me the criticism that movie received. The second one,
The second Cars.
Incredibles.
Incredibles.
Oh, Incredibles. I want to get to Incredibles 2 a little bit later. Can you save your opinion for later, or you want to speak it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So Toy Story 4. I put it down as the second worst. Honestly, I did not hate it that much when I first came out watching it in theaters, but the more I thought about it over the years, the more it ages badly for me with time and age. The only really good thing that I can say about it is the Ducky and Bunny characters being a kind of a classy, witty duo. And the way that I described them to Loudmouth is they were the RC twins from Transformers 2, but actually done good.
I kind of like Toy Story 4. I agree it was an unnecessary movie because Toy Story 3 felt like a better conclusion. But on its own, Toy Story 4 is pretty good.
So the reason, okay, one other thing that I want to give in defense of Toy Story 4, there was this very long-winded review that this guy did of Toy Story 4. He was just reaming into it, and everything I pretty much agreed to him on, or at least gave the benefit of doubt to him on. But there was one point of it that he kept on repeating that I just could not stand that he kept on repeating, and that's the idea that Woody wanting to move on and be with Bo Peep. That idea alone of ditching whatever kid he was with to go with the love of his life is just completely against Woody's character. It's how is it against Woody's character? I mean, the equivalence I draw to this is somebody who really loves America. They so love America that they join the military. But at the same time, maybe a person already served their time in the military. Maybe they already served their time and they want to move on to other things. Maybe they want to eventually settle down and, I don't know, become a construction worker or something at some point in their life. They don't want to just be stuck to just strictly one thing. And so the fact that Woody would move on to be with Bo Peep, that does not betray his characteristic of being all for kids and in service of kids. It just means that he had another thing that was also at his core, and that is his love for Bo Peep, and the fact that he wants to like pursue that now instead of the other core thing about him is not completely against him. But that being said,
what was the other
idea
core thing about him?
wanting to serve kids, like be a child's plaything. The two things is him
Wait, so
being a
him having
child's
that
plaything.
romantic involvement with Bo Peep was across the line? Like, that was always inferred from the very first movie.
Exactly. This guy was just completely baseless with that. But with all that said, I just want to say that this idea, the fact that he would like want to move on from doing one core thing about his personality, that being serving kids, to another core thing about him, want to just settle down and love Bo Peep, on paper, not a bad idea at all. But in execution, Toy Story 4 is bad because of the fact of the way that Bo Peep is such a condescending bitch to Woody in this one. Bo Peep isn't even the same Bo Peep in the first couple of Toy Stories. So in execution, it's absolutely
but I didn't think
shitty.
she's a condescending bitch to him.
There is the one part of where that Bo Peep brings Woody to with a freaking Keanu Reeves biker dude, and Keanu Reeves biker dude is all like, why would somebody do that? I can't remember what the exact subject was, but he would be all like, why would somebody do that? You'd have to be an absolute idiot to do that. And Bo Peep goes saying, oh yes they would, as she like looks over to Woody. So she is like indirectly, what?
Yeah, she was just kind of teasing him, but she's been on her own for several years. Whereas, I mean, keep in mind, like Andy abandoned her and sold her away, whereas Andy was willing to keep Woody and wanted to bring him to college as an adult. I just assume as like a nostalgic little like thing to put on his shelf,
Honestly, it did not seem like a just teasing. I mean, Woody, I remember the look on his face in that scene did not look like he was just taking that as just teasing. It looked like that it was, even if theoretically Bo Peep was just meaning it in jest, not completely meaning anything by it, Woody, on the look of his face, looked like that he was taking that seriously. And so the fact that Bo Peep throughout most of the movie is like barely showing any love to Woody and is just mostly like being condescending and everything towards him just makes the idea of him going to her kind of unrealistic to see on screen. And I'm just going to say the idea of a tough Bo Peep by itself is not a bad idea, but at least a later part of the movie. But here's another thing about the execution of Bo Peep in Toy Story 4 is that with the flashback scene, Bo Peep is a completely different character. In the first couple of movies, she's like the yin to Woody's yang, or opposite, or whatever.
She really
she's
have
like
that much of a character in the first two movies, though. She's kind
not
of
really
like a supportive little girlfriend, just says nice stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But she's also a girlfriend that says nice stuff.
She has held him to account in the other movies. Like, she has grilled him before in the other movies.
Yeah, and also serving as a bit of an emotion.
She did have some characterization.
Yeah, I'm just a couple of blocks away.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like more of a passive kind of emotional support character to Woody within the relationship, and of more of a soft-spoken character. But with the flashback scene, they show her being like some kind of adventurous, like a take command kind of almost military general kind of personality character in that. Like suddenly, instead of her being yin to Woody's yang, suddenly they're yin and yin instead, or yang and yang instead of yin and yang, where they're like able to think exactly the same as far as ideas go.
Like every day, like as opposed to being like that, we could. She basically says, we can stay together. Toys get lost every day, but Woody chooses to stay with Andy.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Well, here, trying to like get to my point though. So completely different personality. Theoretically, there's only like 1 year of time between the time of the end of Toy Story 2 to the beginning of Toy Story 4 with the flashback scene. And suddenly she like goes from personality A in Toy Story 2 to personality Z in the beginning of Toy Story 4. Now, if they began off Toy Story 4 with her being her usual like soft, passive, emotional supportive self in the flashback scene of Toy Story 4, and then years pass, she is like she was like a lost toy and she was forced to adapt to become tougher, and shown like an actual character arc instead of it being like a continuum of a flat line of a not really a character arc, it would have been fine. The idea of a tough Bo Peep, but the fact that they had a completely different personality, the fact that they had the personality that she had in the flashback scene just made it seem pretty unrealistic and just sucked me out of the movie a little bit. The more and more I think about it, especially.
I think you're just nitpicking because I didn't have a problem with it.
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, she has always been kind of confrontational to him to an extent. I do find the whole jungle running to be a bit silly myself. Like, you could be a strong shepherd.
Well, yeah, but there's a difference between the confrontational of being, honey, you need to calm down. This isn't you. Versus, stop it, you stupid idiot. This is how you do it.
She never said that in the movie.
No, I know she didn't, but I like being exaggerative to try and make a point.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope maybe you don't agree quite Loudmouth, but I hope that you at least understand where I'm getting at with what I'm trying to say here. Hope I'm even making sense, anyways.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just how strongly that I feel about Toy Story 4, anyways.
I mean, it wasn't like the best movie ever, but I overall enjoyed it.
But another thing that I definitely came out of Toy Story 4 disliking from the bare beginning and ever since then, putting Bo Peep aside and the poor execution of Woody's arc, even though on paper it's a decent idea, was the fact that the old side characters were completely sidelined, and I go thinking about it, the new side characters were not good enough replacements, aside from maybe the Ducky and Bunny.
Part of that is because
they weren't good enough.
One of the reasons, like Mr. Potato Head is only like 2 lines in the movie is because Don Rickles was dead and they didn't want to replace him, so they just used a couple alternatives for a couple lines.
I get that, and we've kind of went over that before, but the new side characters didn't really work as good enough supplements for the original cast of side characters. I don't know what it is.
I do think the one flaw in the movie is they kind of made Buzz kind of a dumbass, and I didn't really like that very much.
And that is the one absolute worst thing about it, Loudmouth. Thank you for saying it for me.
So
I hate how they butchered
Bo Peep's dynamic with Woody. I thought that was actually well done. Totally don't agree with you there, but I will agree Buzz was made too dumb.
Buzz was made a bitch. He was always the go-get-it idea man of the gang of here as well. Kind of in the same way of Woody, but in a slightly different way. He was always agile, kicking butt, and coming up with ideas on the fly. And now suddenly he cannot come up with an idea on his own in Toy Story 4. He has to rely on his voice box because he's taking Woody's inner voice advice a little bit too literally.
Yeah,
yes,
yes. Kind of comes across a bit of a dimwit, yeah.
Like, I could see him not coming up with the brightest of plans, but like he's always there. You know, he's always a man of action.
Yeah, he would at least have a idea, even if it's not that good of an idea. But Toy Story 4, they show that he can't come up with any idea. So, next movie that I think, at least on a very personal level anyways, is the 4th worst of Pixar anthology or filmography would have to be Brave. Like, I gave a recent rewatch to Brave, and it was like, what am I hearing in the background?
Oh, my GPS, sorry.
Okay.
Well, the thing about Brave is it was a bit of a messy production. That's because it was originally meant to be made by Brenda Chapman, the director of The Prince of Egypt.
Yes.
She left before the movie was finished, and someone else came to finish it. Supposedly, there was creative differences between her and John Lasseter. And honestly, I don't know who to side with there, because I know Brenda Chapman is a talented director because she made one of the greatest movies ever made.
Yes. Exactly. Just should have. She had. Although I guess to be fair, at the time, Prince of Egypt wasn't becoming quite as much of a cult classic as it would become in the 2010s and going into the 2020s as people would think back of it as.
I mean, it was 14 years old and it was
I
a
don't know.
success at the box office.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know about that. Like I was a little kid, I couldn't get away from Prince of Egypt. That was everywhere.
Maybe it's only because I did not have my adult brain on to be as cognizant of the amount of cult following that Prince of Egypt was getting at the time. But yeah, I mean, regardless, he should have paid attention and seen the Prince of Egypt and be all like, "Oh, this girl's a genius. She should have most, if not all, creative liberties with Brave." But unfortunately, she didn't, and so therefore, Brave ended up being a pretty forgettable, unfunny meh of a movie, in my opinion.
I still don't think
was
Brave as it is all right. I thought it had a good message, and it's surprisingly got a good pro family dynamic. I like that that the father character is not a buffoon, that he bravely defends his family and is very competent. I like that it glorifies people for defending their homeland of Scotland. It's about, and it has bonding between a mother and daughter, and that's important because one of the main themes of so many Disney movies before it is that the mom wasn't there in the lives of so many Disney princesses. So making an animated movie that was all about a mother and daughter dynamic was something new and fresh.
I do have to say
that is true, but it just wasn't that memorable of a movie in the end. Is the biggest issue, you know.
Yeah, that didn't make it a great movie, but it had a lot going for it.
Exactly, and Merida herself as a protagonist by herself wasn't particularly memorable. Although I do have to say, whenever she was interacting with her dad, Fergus, that was when that things were interesting. Like, they had a nice rapport with each other. Fergus was, in my opinion, the best character of the entire movie with my most recent rewatch of it. As far as him being a buffoon, though, I think that there was the one part of her... What?
I said he was not a buffoon.
Well, okay. No, I heard that, but there was times before that he was getting a little bit pushed around by his wife, though.
That's just kind of being in a marriage, you know. That's just how it goes sometimes.
That also. I mean, the fact that he didn't beat her right afterwards, not very Scottish. But to be fair,
yeah,
kids movie.
Yeah.
All right. I just got one thing to point out. With my most recent rewatch, I noticed one thing. Doesn't Fergus seem like a more jovial version of Stoic from How to Train Your Dragon?
Kinda, yeah. And I like both characters.
Yeah, I always thought that.
Yeah. So next in the lineup is Turning Red, or as my cousin Chris, you all know him, refers to it as the period movie.
You know, I think it's total blasphemy that you ranked that over Toy Story 4 and Brave. I'm sorry, it's worse than both of those.
I'm not willing to I'm not going to strongly disagree with you on that as much as the idea of whether or not that Toy Story 4 by itself is a good movie or not. Because Turning Red, it's not a movie that I can defend heavily. Because Turning Red honestly was, again, one of the least funny of Pixar's catalog. There's only one part where I actually laughed at it, and that was when the mom wrecked the concert and was all and put on some clothes to all the concert goers.
Okay, that was a little bit fun. That actually was pretty funny. There were a few funny moments in it, but making a whole movie about menstruation is just kind of definitely one of the weirder ideas Pixar had.
I thought that the whole menstruation thing was a bit of a side gag with the mom, or excuse me, I can't even remember the main May. That was her name. Of how that May first became a panda, and there was a whole bunch of confusing shenanigans between her and her mom, and her mom was mistaking her to be on her first period when, in all actuality, she was on her first panda stroke, and later on, it's found out, no, this ain't actually her period. I don't know if I thought that it was quite the equivalent that they were trying to go for. I can see where people see it, but I don't know. It's just me. And I did think that there was at least in the middle parts of the movie, I did see that there was a little bit of a struggle with May of trying to find a balance between trying to find her own independence and also trying to uh, stay within the family norms, like loyalty to family and all that stuff. Maybe by the end, they did not actually stick the landing of her trying to find a balance in the same way that Brave was about the daughter, in that case, Merida, trying to find a balance between independence and loyalty to family and all that stuff. But I just thought, I personally thought that the message was all right enough within Turning Red, but everything else within it was either forgettable, if not outright bad. Like, I did not care for the BFF side characters at all. It wasn't fun to watch them bounce off of each other or anything. The dad was okay, I guess. And again, it was like one of the least funny of Pixar's catalog. So just turned into like an ultimately forgettable experience. And I absolutely hated of how the characters always spazzed out like if they were anime characters.
Yeah, it kind
Oh
it kind
yeah.
of had that, like Minions kind of ultra fast pace that kind of annoyed me.
Oh, it
Exactly.
had that fucking TikTok energy going.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely an accurate way of putting it, Trucker.
Yeah. No, I just don't like that. Like Red Panda's movie representation was a kind of crappy movie because Red Pandas are cool,
Yeah.
and I see like there are like the topic of like a woman's menstruation period, whatever, young girl in school, like that can be a well done, interesting topic, and like a great one is a book that I read where it was about the author when she went blind. It was like partially autobiographical. It was about when she went blind, but it was also around the same time that she first started having her period and stuff. So it obviously encompassed that as part of the story and the whole life experience. And you can have really interesting stories around that stuff, but like you can't approach it with that overly zealous energy because it's a serious topic, even for kids.
Yeah. One thing I wanted
It just
to
got,
say. Sorry, do you have something more, Chris?
I was just gonna say, the balance of the seriousness of something like your first period with the comedy is just gonna kind of drain the movie of both, I think, and make it kind of boring.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to say about Turning Red. Kind of also addressing Red Feather in the chat. Turning Red was okay, but the whole magic of being a woman was dumb. Which, some that I wanted to say to that. As much of a leftist like leaning that Turning Red obviously has with its plot, it at least did not do a big time subversion of gender roles. Like, Turning Red does implicitly admit that men inherently and biologically are stronger than women. And when they go into the flashback of saying the beginnings of why that the red panda powers of women is a thing, even is because of the fact that men are stronger than women and they were the main defenders of a village, and it's because of the fact that they were getting killed off so much as to why that women had to get the red panda powers in the first place so that they could like increase their strength
Huh.
and become defenders in place of men. So it's not like that they were saying that women are inherently stronger than men. They're only stronger than men if they're like in an animalistic kind of form, as this movie is kind of saying.
Right, the 30-foot tall panda woman is stronger than an average man.
Yes.
Right. As opposed to an average woman being stronger than an average man or something like that.
Yeah, and like her mom becoming like a literal kaiju-sized giant panda monster, and after she finds out her daughter snuck off to the concert, that was kind of fun.
Believe me, there's nothing magical about PMS, says a Red Feather. And yes, I'll definitely agree with you. Like, people like to seem to put periods on a pedestal and idolize them for some weird reason.
So Turning Red had some
What
interesting ideas.
periods can
Yeah.
But what periods can do, like why you have periods is magical. Periods themselves, fucking awful.
You're talking about the procreation and birthing of children?
Yeah, that's magical, but the period itself, that sucks ass.
I agree. Ultimately, with all this, by the way, side note, Loudmouth and Trucker for that matter, I would like to see you guys at tier maker lists if you were to ever, so that maybe we can like contrast and
Well, the
compare.
top Pixar's best movie is Up. Up is my all-time favorite Pixar, and one of my favorite movies. Period.
Oh, it's such a good movie.
Yeah, Up, Toy Story 3, Coco, would be like in the top tier.
Incredibles wasn't that great for
And
Mm.
you?
the Incredibles and Finding Nemo. Those would all be
like
the top tier.
Yeah, those. That's all a very like high quality S tier list right there.
Yeah.
Right.
Inside Out would also probably be up there. Up there, the original. Inside Out 2, maybe like in the middle. Soul was
I
one.
agree with your S tier list, except for Inside Out. Don't care for that one up there.
Soul would also be. I kind of agree with putting in the mid of Pixar, just because I felt like if the ending had been better, it genuinely would be in like the top of Pixar's movies. But I thought the ending was a bit of a cop out.
Yeah, so skipping along in my list here a bit, Soul, my thought about Soul, and you mentioned the ending, there was one plot hole that I had mentioned right off the bat when I first watched it, and is that Joe, he had like got himself successfully back into the real world after dying originally. His soul was officially back in his body, and the way that he gets back into the soul world is that he gets into the zone or whatever they call it. It's only because of that. He doesn't actually die. And yet after he helps soul number whatever 22 soul number 22, he decides to go into the stairway to heaven, I'm just gonna call it, because for some reason I guess he's accepted his death. But here's the thing, he didn't die in all that time there though. It was only because he was only in the soul world because he was in the zone, not because he died. He should only be going to the stairway to heaven because if he had actually died, but yet he hadn't. It's like,
it's the
what
fact
the
that
heck?
he essentially like gives his Earth pass, essentially gives his life for 22. Essentially makes a very big sacrifice, but then then like the ethereal beings basically say, you know what, we're so impressed by your bravery, we're going to let you back and live out the rest of your life anyway. I thought that was a cop out. I think Joe should have died at the end. I think
The thing is,
it would have made his sacrifice more meaningful, and I would have liked I think the perfect ending for Soul would have been him on the stairway to the great beyond and have it flash to various points of his life, and him to say, even though my life was cut short, even all right, I was happy to live it. And, both him dying, but also him being at peace with it would have been
unfortunately, Pixar is not ran by Don Bluth though. But the thing that I wanted to say about that though is that he shouldn't have needed the Earth pass because he had already successfully gone back to Earth and into his body though.
But he gave that to 22, and I actually listened to the audio commentary on Soul, and apparently Pete Docter says he considered actually killing Joe at the end, but he didn't because as he said it, his justification would be that he would feel like a cop out for Joe to learn all these lessons but then be dead and never get to use them. Like it would be like if George from It's a Wonderful Life had basically learned that his life was worth living, but then got hit by a bus right after. That's the way he put it. But I don't really agree with him on that because even if Joe didn't get to benefit from the lessons, the audience still would have. So
and
I think he's wrong there.
Yeah, and it's a fictional character. Your story would have been more impactful if he died, probably, which would have made your point even more true. Oh shit.
So one of the reasons as to why that I put Soul in the merely good category is because of the conflict between Joe and his mom and the core message of that part of the story, and that Joe is afraid that his life will amount to nothing. He's kind of struggling to get the approval, or at least not get the disapproval from his mom of what he wants to pursue, and that being music in his case. And I honestly like that, and it's kind of something that I relate to. honestly, because
that scene was really well written. Actually, I actually was amazed at how adult and like mature this writing is. I mean, it shows that it actually showed a great respect for the audience, and one of the many reasons I think Soul genuinely is a very, very good movie that was almost a masterpiece if it had a better ending.
To be clear, Loudmouth, that was me complimenting the movie.
Right.
But yeah, there's that. Also, like the concept of this little soul world that is like an in between of worlds. I like the concept of that. But the reason why I have it merely in the good category and not anything higher is because of the fact that it's one of the lesser funny movies of Pixar. I did not really get that much of a kick out of the whole cat versus Soul 22 and Joe's body shenanigans. I mean, it's something that's been done before, but in much better ways by more funnier and wittier movies. At the same time, there are no outright annoying characters throughout any point of the movie. But it's just, it had a very good core message to it that really elevates it, with there being like no real big cons.
People with depression in it are essentially lost souls that become kind of like monstrous. You see kind of their soul and their essence walking through the realm while they're on Earth in depression. That actually is a really brilliant way of portraying that.
Mm-hmm.
Really, that's interesting.
Yeah, Soul. I still highly recommend Soul, even though I wish it had even though I think the ending could have been better.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't even mind going for another rewatch of it, even though I've watched it 2 times already, just to like jot down the message a whole lot better. But rewinding back, A Good Dinosaur, I also put in the substandard category, mostly because it's like not offensively bad, but it's nothing that good on the level of Pixar. Though, if this was like produced by another studio like Illuminations, it would be good by their standards, but because it's Pixar that we're talking about, Good Dinosaur is this low. Mostly because Arlo's arc of like be brave is not a very compelling arc, especially when you take into account that freaking Petrie from Land Before Time, everybody, his arc of become brave was done a whole lot better, and Arlo's arc just seemed like a copy paste of Petrie's arc, but done a whole lot more poorly. What do you think, Loudmouth?
Yeah, I mostly agree that The Good Dinosaur is definitely not one of Pixar's best movies. But what I kind of like about it is it's essentially a Western. It has kind of a boy and his dog type Western story with the human who can't speak acting as the dog kind of character, and I kind of like that. But man, like one of probably the silliest part of that movie was when they use Spot, the human character, and they use these tyrannosaurs want to use his nose to sniff out their cattle, and I'm like, what? I mean, Tyrannosaurus Rex had like the biggest olfactory lobes of any creature other than the turkey vulture that ever lived. Yeah. It had an amazing sense of smell, whereas humans have a terrible one by comparison. But I'm like, but it's a fantasy movie, so I'm like, whatever. Kind of like, and yeah, it basically them like raising cattle out on the ranch was kind of like an interesting idea. Like it kind of evolved these dinosaurs in this alternate reality where the mass extinction never happened, and kind of like sentient, basically like, I don't know, medieval archetypes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I really like that one. That was a real cute one.
What I definitely liked about it is that it looks pretty, and the T-Rex characters specifically were pretty cool, but everything else about it was not particularly compelling or funny.
I loved his character.
Oh yeah. I bit one croc in half, tail whipped the other one, and the last one, well, I drowned that old croc in my own blood.
But I'm wondering, the opening where you see like the meteor fly past Earth, and it's set in an alternate reality where the KT mass extinction never happened. I'd love to see a movie that explored that idea but actually took it seriously. It was like, because there have been books on that, but never a movie. I would love to see somebody do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Maybe. There's been lots of great alternate history YouTube videos about it that go pretty well and pretty good production.
Yeah, there was what's cool about that. There was a book in the '80s called "The New Dinosaurs," which is set in an alternate version of the 20th century, where the mass extinction never happened. And what's funny is he creates a bunch of fictional dinosaurs that would live in the modern world in this fictional alternate reality. And he invents an anteater dinosaur as one example, and then they actually discovered an anteater dinosaur later on. So it's like his fictional creature became reality.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that happens all the time. Hilariously enough, though, like one guy, there was the what was it? The filter feeding Precambrian creature.
Right.
And so the one right above Good Dinosaur, at least in my opinion, would have to be The Incredibles 2. Like The Incredibles 2, honestly, the thing that like takes it down for me is that I don't think I can like nab down what core message it's trying to say. I mean, what do you think, Loudmouth?
Same message as the first movie. Both essentially are kind of a view kind of similar to Ayn Rand. Actually, it's one where like the most talented people in society are kind of driven out by a society that wants everyone to be mediocre, and then kind of more talented people should be allowed to express themselves and use their talents for the betterment of the world. So in the first movie, the exact same message, and Incredibles 2 just kind of continued that.
I hear you, Loudmouth.
Yeah, I will.
Although maybe the reason as to why that I don't quite think that, or at least didn't quite think that, is because it wasn't quite as clear as in the first one to me.
Yeah,
Plus,
to be fair, the second one was a lot more muddy.
the second one had a lot of good action sequences, like especially with Elastigirl chasing down the subway train, for example. One thing that kind of annoys me about the movie is of how that Bob Parr is just reduced to nothing but a stay-at-home dad, in which that probably by itself would not be too bad of an idea if it weren't for the fact that he like buckles to the pressure of having to give in to Common Core math at one point.
Oh, that was one of the
movie.
funniest jokes in the movie. What? Why did they change math?
Yeah, for real. Fuck Common Core, man. Fuck Common Core.
Yeah, that joke was hilarious. I love that.
No. I gotcha. Like that joke by itself, yeah, it's funny. Math is math. But then after that joke, he like gives in and decides to go along with Common Core.
Well, he's just trying to be a supportive dad and help his kids, and obviously he buckles under the pressure.
Yeah,
Because, goddamn, one of his baby is like a shit ton of freaky deaky powers. Who wouldn't go nuts?
Yeah. I will say the criticism I've heard of The Incredibles 2 that's a real weird one for me is that people say it like emasculates the father, Mr. Incredible, Bob, because like now what's her name? Miss Incredible. What was her name?
Elastigirl?
I forgot.
Or how?
Well, yeah, I know Elastigirl. But yeah, they were saying like, oh, it emasculates Bob because she's the hero, la la la. And it's like, did you guys not see the first movie where Bob is the very fucking reason superheroes were illegalized?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he saved a man who didn't want to be saved.
I mean, it definitely makes narrative sense as to how that it would become that the woman would get the main career, and there's also like another problem with it, and that Schaefer Rose like points out of how that Mr. Incredible is so bitter about the fact that she pursues her career, and there's like no makeup for that fact of how he's.
Yeah, there was. I mean, if you look at it, Bob obviously he's kind of jealous because he does want to be the hero himself, but at the same time he still is always supportive of his wife. All right, that's the thing. We all have like petty, jealous or bad instincts in us, all of us. But the mark of a good man is overcoming them, and that's what Bob does. He overcomes kind of his more petty, childish impulses.
I have to maybe give a rewatch to the movie. I guess I just don't explicitly
he still
remember
supported
him
her
making
thoroughly.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's not a perfect person, that's fine. You know, he does have flaws. I mean, he's a middle-aged guy, you know, who kind of revels in remembering his glory days, and that kind of does get him into trouble. He's not a perfect guy, but ultimately he's still supportive to his family. And another interesting part I really loved is when Helen is under the mind control. And there's a scene where he's kind of confused at why Helen's attacking him. At first, he doesn't barely feel her punches because of his super strength. But she kind of sees that he can't be defeated physically. But then she just kind of like suddenly kisses him, and that kind of like makes him vulnerable.
Oh yeah, no.
There's a couple things
I really like.
There's a couple things that I think we can both agree about this movie is that it had an absolutely lame villain with a lame motivation and side superheroes. Those ugly looking ones that they introduced about halfway through the movie were kind of crappy looking and not very well fleshed out, right?
I liked the Hypno villain. I really liked the Hypno villain at the start of it.
Yeah.
But then, the real...
Yeah, then the real villain came out and she was boring as fuck.
Yeah, but then, the twist is this dude's bitter that his dad's died. And so in return, he's going to provide you with millions of dollars so he can ruin you again.
Were you about to say, Loudmouth?
Yeah. I mean, I will say that the villain wasn't as cool as Syndrome in the first movie. I will agree with that.
To be fair, it's hard to follow up Syndrome, but that villain himself is kind of lame.
Yeah.
Well, with Syndrome, it's kind of funny because he's just essentially a petty, entitled fanboy who obviously is a brilliant inventor, but also kind of idolize people when he's put in his place, which Bob was pretty much entirely right to do so. I mean, you shouldn't want a 15-year-old out there. I mean, Batman was kind of an asshole for letting Robin go out there at 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I always thought it was so bizarre when you'd see people who were like, Bob needed to treat him better. And it's like, no, Bob treated him perfectly right. That man's a fucking idiot.
Yeah, he just said...
he is just too emotionally invested.
Yeah, exactly.
So, next up, as far as the order goes, would have to be, in my opinion at least, Finding Dory. Good things first about the movie. Dory makes a far better protagonist than Mater does in Cars 2. She's so compelling, and it's so interesting and relatable to see a girl like her. I find it relatable, kind of a little bit to my life, in that there's potentially a good talent that the appropriate person has. In the case of Finding Dory, it's that she is able to read, whereas most to all fish aren't unable to. But she's just a little bit held back by the fact that she has a bit of a mental illness, and that being her short-term memory loss.
That's actually what I like about this movie. It teaches respect for people with mental illnesses.
Right. And I also really like the rapport that she had with Hank. I gotta have a rewatch to Finding Dory to really jot down that. But I just really remembered them having a almost, I guess you could say, brother-sister kind of relationship as they were developing throughout that movie. That was kind of cool. And also the
which character was Hank?
The octopus, voiced by Ed O'Neill.
Oh,
Al Bundy.
I thought so. I liked the octopus. He was cool.
Yeah. That being said, most of the other new side characters were kind of annoying, or I do not know if it's the characters themselves or the fact that the movie rushed them. Especially going towards the end, the fact of how that's the one big whale. I can't even remember her name or what her subspecies of whale was, but she goes doing the whole whale calling voice super fast, and it just got really annoying. We get it, Pixar. The whole whale talking gag in the first movie was funny. We get it, but you're just beating a dead horse at this point, and you're way overplaying it to where it's getting really freaking old. And it doesn't help that you have the whale calling being talked really fast, a whole lot faster than a whale would actually talk.
Well, the whale.
Hey guys, I gotta go. I'm sorry. I really liked my time here, though.
Okay, we'll probably only go on.
Gotta go, guys.
Thanks for joining.
Beluga whale. That's the kind of whale you were thinking
of. She was a blue whale?
Beluga.
Okay. I gotta say one thing. At least you don't have the annoying background noise of Reckless Trucker, but Oh well, it's sad that we lost such a fiery personality that is Reckless Trucker.
Right.
Wait, did I just make that sound gay?
Donna.
But
But
also
if you did, you'll get a job at Disney World any day now.
Also, I do think that there's a bit of a point to be made about how that Marlin was like had a little bit of a regression between Finding Nemo going to Finding Dory. Like he wasn't so much of a controlling character. He goes through the arc of learning how to become not so much of a controlling, irritable character, and then it's regressed to where that he's back to being a controlling, irritable character again. Especially at the beginning of Finding Dory.
He's still ultimately a father who tries to protect his kid, same as the first movie.
But is he being overly protective?
I mean, like he snaps at Dory out of anger and says something he shouldn't say, and he kind of like, and I like where he says, "Oh, did you tell me that before? Or did I forget?" No, you didn't forget. I never told you.
Darkon wants that truck parked in his garage, says Red Feather. Thanks. Nothing like gay jokes, right, Red Feather? Thank you very much.
Yes.
Also, I hate the fact of how that crush was only a bit of a nostalgic tease at one very brief point of the movie. I mean, he wasn't as fun and like well utilized as in the first movie. That was a little bit annoying to me.
Yeah, I mean, not really that much you could do with him in this story.
I guess not. I mean, ultimately, he is just a glorified taxi service for his part of the Pacific Ocean. But oh well. And also the freaking climax of the movie is freaking stupid with of how that you have an octopus driving a truck. And
yeah, it's kind of silly, but at the same time, you know, it's a movie. You know? There's silliness in all of these movies, all of them.
There really is. And that is what Pixar is known for, is having a little bit of slapstick silliness that I guess can be kind of hit and miss with everybody, but oh well.
Yeah.
Next up would in my lineup would have to be Elemental. Like
Elemental.
I don't know. Maybe
I think you ranked that a bit too high. I'd rank that below like half the movies on your below tiers. I'd rank it below Brave. I'd rank it below Toy Story 4. I'd rank it below Incredibles 4, and I'd rank it below Finding Dory.
Maybe, and I gotta like give it another rewatch because
it's probably maybe on par with The Good Dinosaur, and even that's being kind.
Well, the one thing that is weak about this movie, I do gotta say, is the love romance by itself. Like, I think that the idea of a interracial couple having to get over with their struggles of their appropriate families, like being disapproving of the idea of this relationship, is like fine on paper, but the love, I just could not really see that good a chemistry between these two characters, especially with the introduction of where that Arlo, or not Arlo, Wade is just freaking crying consistently.
Yeah, that's what annoyed me about Wade. And the idea of like a water man and a fireman being an allegory for interracial romance is kind of stupid because, you know, water and fire do cancel each other out. You know, the water and fire genuinely don't really mix well together, whereas different races of human can and have been fucking safely for millions of years.
Yeah, and that is a flaw with this movie, and kind of with Zootopia too, is because they pull out allegories that don't really work. I mean, with Zootopia, I mean, as much as people want to say that Judy Hopps' speech is like an allegory for racism of race realists saying, oh, black people are just inherently violent because it's in their DNA or whatever. The truth of the matter is, with predator type animals like tigers and lions, it in all reality is part of their DNA. Black people, the difference is between black people and predator animals is that with black people, it's not true. Just plain and simple. With predator animals, though, there is a high grain of truth to that. I mean, yeah, you can train an animal to where they won't eat humans so much, and maybe you just, I don't know, feed like a cow steak to your pet lion or whatever, in theory, but their very nature, they'll still have to hunt. They'll still hunt down animals and eat them if they have to.
Oh yeah, my dog still tries to kill rabbits in our yard all the time.
And then you have like a elemental here that's trying to say water and fire can mix when really it's all like, no, they cannot. I mean, not unless you like put oil on top of the water, but even then that's oil and fire mixing, not water and fire mixing.
Yeah, so it's as an allegory, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Although, aside from the idea of elements mixing, I do have to say that other parts of the world building, I kind of liked, like the way that the city worked and all that stuff. I mean, it's definitely a city that would not work for fire people, but it looked pretty, in my opinion.
Another thing about the way this world works is there's a lot of water in it in this movie that's not water people. So I'm wondering, is that dead water? When water people die, do they just become inanimate water? So is Wade, when he goes into it, is he like swimming through the bodies of his ancestors?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. And another question similarly posed by Saberspark was so you have like fire that eats like wood logs to regenerate themselves. So in essence, well, actually, it's probably not as applicable because I mean, are they eating the body parts of Earth people? But the thing that I kind of thought about that is, no, they're not really eating the body parts of Earth people. It's more like Earth people if they like shave their hair and then sell that to fire people or something as food. It's like kind of out there, but still, I can see there being some scientific plausibility to that kind of thing. Like Earth people, they make a killing off of selling their logs to their logs. That does not sound like a penis joke at all. To fire people so that they can eat.
Yeah, it did a kind of a dump. There's a scene where they look into Earth people's home and they're like picking fruit out of each other, and then they look in the mirror. Oh, how embarrassed we are to be talking. Was that some kind of dumb innuendo? If so, the joke didn't really work and wasn't really funny.
Yeah. Although I do have to say that I really like the relationship between the daughter and dad, though, and of how that they also had a nice rapport with each other. There's a bit of an arc that the dad has to go through. I mean, the arc
that all was good.
The arc of his racism is a little bit rushed of how it becomes like no longer racist or prejudiced towards water people, but the arc that he goes through with his daughter specifically of accepting that, oh, she doesn't really want to do this, I have to let her pursue her own career and not expect her to pursue the same career as I did. That's nice. And the fact that at the end of the movie, he gives the bow of respect, or whatever they call it, to her when his dad did not find it in his heart to give it to him. That was a pretty nice and touching scene right there, I say.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, it is a pretty decent movie. Just on Pixar standard, it's definitely one of their weaker movies.
And maybe for that matter, that I should like probably put it in the substandard category. I don't know. Maybe I'll like go ahead and put it below Finding Dory just because of the fact that the core message with Finding Dory is better than the core, and is definitely better executed than the core message of Elemental.
Right.
Cars, the first one. What are your thoughts, Loudmouth?
Cute movie. A good final performance by Paul Newman. And I like it has a good plot of like kind of this arrogant prima donna West Coast elitist kind of learning to appreciate Middle America.
Was he? Well, he would have been more like a Southern elitist because, I mean, was Lightning McQueen from California? I thought he was journeying to California.
More east. I guess East Coast elitist, kind of this hotshot celebrity, you know, who just kind of like thinks he's better than everyone else, but he kind of humbles himself and makes friends with kind of group of people in Middle America. I actually thought that was a pretty good message, pretty fun little movie.
Yeah,
all's good.
I like the soundtrack, the opening of the soundtrack for most of it, even though
a lot of good road songs in it. That was clever.
Oh, life could be dream.
Life is a highway. I want to ride it all night long.
Yep. all that stuff. It's a simple but good enough movie for me to like rank it kind of middling. I mean, it's definitely nowhere near their best, but at least it has a good central character arc of Lightning McQueen getting more in touch with the common man to become less egotistical.
Right.
A Bug's Life.
Oh yeah, that's a really good one. Honestly, it has a brilliant way of teaching kids about how bullies and tyrants work. The
Yep.
scene with Hopper explaining that is one of my like favorite scenes. Like that's something every kid needs to have drilled in their brains. Remember,
Yep.
you let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That is why we're going back.
That's exactly how tyrants always think. They're always afraid of the people they push around, kind of ganging up against them.
Yeah,
they always have to, and they often fear. They have to project fear and often seem more powerful than they actually are. Hopper knows that if the ants unite against him, they're much stronger than he is.
There seems to be a recent trend of leftist movie reviewers trying to say that A Bug's Life is like some kind of pro-commie movie or something like that, saying that the ants standing up to the grasshoppers was the proletariat standing up to the bourgeoisie, which maybe there is that, but they also kind of poo-poo the idea that it could also be an allegory for the common man standing up to the government. They don't seem to realize that when really that it could be either one theoretically.
Yeah, just generally, the message is that it's better to stand up to bullies. That bullies don't have. Oftentimes, that a bully's power over you is in your mind. That they're not as strong as they try to appear to be.
I gotta say, I watched Shafrilla's villains ranking, and I was kind of afraid that he was going to have a heavily pro-commie like slant in how that he talked about Hopper when he got to reviewing him as a villain. But I'm glad that he surprisingly enough did not go into that territory. He did not say he's like a capitalist pig. He just said he's an oppressor. Just a general term. Oppressor.
In no way was Hopper in any way a capitalist. He didn't run a business or anything. He basically he essentially was a mobster who went around extorting smaller businesses.
He could almost be more equivalent to like a barbarian clan leader, like always seasonally like raiding the smaller village farm villages.
Pretty much. Nothing about Hopper's actions fit under capitalism at all. So I don't know what they're talking about there.
It's just leftists being leftists, I guess.
He just likes stealing people's stuff, and he liked bullying people smaller than him through fear.
It's the same problem with with them in regards of the way that they review robots, and maybe that's a video that I need to make some future time, but not for right now. But one thing that Bug's Life, the biggest thing that we have to talk about here is just the villain, and really that probably is like the strongest thing of A Bug's Life is nothing is like outright bad, but nothing is like outright that good either, except for the villain. And when I was like a kid, when I first watched A Bug's Life, I was always intimidated and fearful of Hopper himself, but also the grasshoppers at large. Like they always had like a super creepy design. Like the way that the trailer shown when the grasshoppers would like creep out of the fog with that overly dramatic music in the earlier trailers, that just always gave me the super duper heebie-jeebies. Like,
it's always funny in a lot of places too. I mean, I think the line that got me laughing is after like PT Flea gets burned up after the whole the whole circus act blows up in his face, and then one of the flies in the crowd yells, "Yeah, burn him again!"
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I'm sorry. And I love one of them says, "I only got 24 hours to live, and I ain't gonna waste it here."
Yeah, I do have to say that all the side characters in A Bug's Life, as kind of middling they are at least more funny and memorable than most of the side characters below this movie that I have ranked here, anyways. Exception being perhaps the first Cars. That, in my opinion, anyways. Monsters University.
I've done a whole video on this one.
Yep.
Yeah,
Great
so,
core
you
message.
already know my opinions on Monsters University. It's an underrated flick. It has a fantastic message. You know that sometimes you can't achieve all your dreams, and but you can do other stuff. You know.
I have to say, with exception to Inside Out 2 and the first two Toy Story sequels, it is definitely the best sequel that Pixar has done. Which I don't know if that's saying a whole lot, but still. And a lot of people like
Well,
Nostalgia
it's not
Critic
a
and shit.
sequel; it's a prequel.
Well, prequel, okay, technicalities, but anyway, Monsters University is pretty strong. The more and more I go thinking about it as the years go by, like Nostalgia Critic and Shay Fro's Productions, they always have like a problem with the middle portions of the scare games. And honestly, when I watched the movie originally, I did not have that much of a problem with it. And even the new side characters they brought in, I did not think were as annoying as a lot of the other characters, like say Turning Red side characters or a couple of Finding Dory's
I
side
will kind of
characters.
agree, though, that there was this Monsters University short that basically had them putting two doors and they go across this parent's house. And honestly, that short was extremely funny. And I will agree that the middle gags in the movie aren't as funny as they could have been. Well, basically, they put two doors and they're basically like smuggling like various party get gear from one place to another and trying to like have the biggest party on campus. All right. So monsters are basically going through this couple's room while they're sleeping. And then at the end of the cartoon, the two parents go into their kids' room with holding their pillows and say, "Can we sleep here? There's monsters in our room." And the kid's like, "That's what I've been trying to tell you."
Yep, Monsters Inc. And Monsters University, equally speaking, are fair. Well, okay, Monsters University to a lesser extent, but the short there, I'd have to check it out myself to see how funny it is, really. But yeah, as Loudmouth said, he's made a whole video about it, and I'll have to like link that video in the description box in post of this live stream. But yes. Long and short, the core message of it being that you're not always going to get exactly what you want career-wise, largely because you might just naturally not be very talented in the way that you want to be talented, unfortunately. So you're going to have to find other avenues. And eventually, Mike Wazowski, who is the protagonist in this one, has to find a different avenue, and he does.
But it's a pretty harsh message, but it's one kids I think need to hear more often.
One thing that I did have a slight problem with Monsters University, always have and maybe always will, is the idea that what am I trying to say? Is the idea. It almost seems like that they retconned Mike's personality a bit. Like in the first one, that being Monsters Inc., he was always like a spineless, cowardly little weasel. In Monsters University, somehow they show him to be to have a bit more of a spine, to be more brave. When really in Monsters Inc., he's nothing like that. Even in like the end of Monsters University, Sully says, "You're fearless." It's like, okay, I don't see how he was that exactly in Monsters Inc. I mean, he's always been kind of chicken shit in the first one.
Was he really all that chicken shit? It's more just that he was he was obsessively career orientated because he worked for his position. It's kind of similar to his arc in Monsters University. In Monsters University, he reacts really angrily that his victory at that competition wasn't earned because he felt like he had done all the hard work he had, and yet he couldn't do it it turned out without cheating. So that emotionally crushed him. In the original movie, he also like him and Sully reach a point of kind of success together, working as a team. They worked their way up from the mailroom to being the top scarers of the company as a team, and then he sees his best friend seemingly to jeopardize all their hard work, and he's upset about it.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I think is fairly strong about Monsters University is that it actually gives a decent origin story to the development of the relationship between Mike and Sully, who are arguably the best, if not, or at least one of the best duos in all of Pixar's filmography.
The one thing though is the original movie does have a line where he says, "You've been jealous of my good looks since the 4th grade." Definitely seems like Monsters University contradicts that line a bit.
Not so sure if I remember that part.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a line where they're walking and Sully Mike casually says to Sully, you've been jealous of my good looks since the 4th grade, pal." They, from what I hear, they tried real hard during the development to try to work that line in, but they couldn't figure out a way to do so without dragging the movie down. Like they had like an earlier scene of them meeting early in elementary school before meeting again in college, and in one later draft they had the various parts of the competition just be called grades, and like the last grade would be the 4th grade.
Oh shoot!
To try to do that, but that confused kids, so they cut that up too. So eventually, they just chose to ignore that line completely.
Shoot! Actually, you just kind of ruined my immersion of the believability of the development of their relationship. It's like, yeah, Monsters Inc. I need to rewatch it again. There's a lot of Pixar movies that I need to rewatch, apparently. But yeah, Monsters Inc. That line, "You've been jealous of my good looks since the 4th grade," and then suddenly Monsters University, they're pretending like it's the very first time that they've ever met.
Yeah, in college. Right.
Oops. Anyway, above that is Solo. We already talked in length about that one. We don't have much longer. Maybe we'll go on more 8 minutes. Maybe that'll give us time to review the next 3 movies here, and then we'll end it. And that being next one on the docket is Finding Nemo. And you said that you put it in the S tier, right? The very top.
Oh yeah, it's one of my it's a favorite movie of mine.
I don't know what it is about Finding Nemo, but I guess I just never found it that super duper appealing to me. I've always thought that it was good, but I never thought it to be oh, I definitely want to give this a rewatch great in the same way that Toy Story or Monsters Inc. or Incredibles was for me when I was younger. But it was always good, like the quotable lines of all the sharks and the tank gang and all that other stuff. And not to mention the core story of Marlin trying to get over his helicopter parenting. There seems to also, like I mentioned with both Brave and Turning Red, there seems to be a little bit of a struggle between the certain parent and child characters trying to find some balance, some in between as far as child's independence versus child's loyalty to their parent,
Yeah.
And they successfully find
that
it.
Fish can clownfish can actually change their sex from male to female. So in reality, after his mom being killed, Nemo probably would have changed his gender to female to be the mate of the group. But that would have been a little fucked up for a children's movie.
Yeah. Oh man, I can already hear the LGBT activists reeing at that part. It's all Pixar was not progressive enough back then to give us a transgender dad to become a transgender mom. How dare they? Ree!
Yeah, right. Some fish can do that. It's really weird. They can actually change their sex.
Oh man. I'm just gonna move on before I think about the idea of of some kind of leftist retcon of Finding Nemo.
Right.
Anyway, Ratatouille.
Really good movie.
I thought it was really good as well. I guess I always thought that Ratatouille was just a little bit too much of a slow burn movie, especially in my younger years for me.
That's what I love about it. I love it. Feels very much more adult written than average for Pixar's movies, and that's one reason I appreciate it more.
I've always liked the idea of Anton Ego going from kind of a bad guy to then kind of a good guy. I do not know why it is, but it's always been in some ingrained part of my personality that if executed well, I like the idea of a bad guy becoming a good guy.
He never really was a bad guy at any point. He kind of had a bit of a sinister demeanor, but all he was saying, "Yeah, I'm a food critic, and I'm gonna do my job and judge your food." Not exactly like super evil shit here.
There's some person kind of spamming the live chat asking, anyone remember Connie the cow?
No.
Darkman, you remember Connie the cow?
No, I don't know what the fuck that is.
I don't even know what the heck that is. No,
not a clue. Let's move on.
Yeah. Ratatouille, yeah, good movie. Not so sure I can commentate on it that much, but Shea Furloughs did a full-length review about that, if anybody is interested on that. But anyway, next in the lineup is Onward.
Really, really good, a really great movie, which unfortunately was a victim of the pandemic.
Yeah, and
It was good, but it needed to have at least 1 centaur with a MAGA hat in
it. Yes, we all know that's the true way that you get like a full representation with a movie. You date it with modern day political references.
Yes. Good old in jokes.
If anybody like knows the history of me and Loudmouth and my both of my appropriate YouTube channels, you'll get that reference.
Yes.
But yeah, my thing with Onward, it's definitely one of the most overly hated movies of all Pixar. Like,
why? Well, I haven't met anyone who hates it.
Well, if you go watching Schaefer's Productions, he really dislikes the movie. I guess he does not like really hate it in the same way that he hates Cars 2, but he has it like as the 4th or 5th worst in all of Pixar's catalog for some reason.
I think it's one of their strongest movies. When it came out, I said, wow, that was the best animated movie I've seen since Coco.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the most emotionally fulfilling experiences for me too. As far as the whole entire Disney corporation goes, and this was like at a time of when that Marvel was at their highest and most like culturally omniscient point, and so Onward was definitely a breath of fresh air. But I guess one of the biggest reasons why Schaefer was annoyed about it was because of the casting of Chris Pratt as Barley.
Why? I thought he did all right.
I don't even know. Well,
why are you mentioning this guy you're talking about? I don't know what you're talking about.
Schaefer's Production. He's the guy with the Tamatoa like a profile picture. I always go talking about him. Maybe I'll like link you a couple of his works, but I really like him. As much of a leftist he is, I really like his watching his ranking videos.
Yeah, I love the idea of like two teenage brothers, and it has both the fantasy like journey archetype because it kind of is like a play on the whole fantasy world, though in a more modernist setting. And it ties into like a story about these two kids getting over in the hole that's left in their hearts from losing their dad. I thought I thought the whole thing was just very well done.
Yeah, I like most of the aspects of the world building, as you said, but there is one fair bit of criticism that Shafe actually mentioned, and that is that the idea that all these mythical creatures suddenly get back their magical powers, it was kind of rushed. Like, after just one interaction with both the two brothers, the Pixies suddenly regained back their flying ability. Like, realistically, once they like fell off their bike and got flung and catapulted into the air, realistically they would have just splattered on the pavement instead of like suddenly like 1 or 2 inches before they hit the ground their wings start flapping and they start flying again.
It's a fantasy world. It can invent whatever rules it wants. Just needs to be consistent with them.
I don't know. I mean, it's definitely one of the smallest things in my mind, but I can definitely see the criticism for that. But on the point of Chris Pratt, he goes saying that Chris Pratt's voice is way too smug for the part of Barley. And the thing is, I don't think it's really smug. It's more like cocky overconfidence, and that is the whole characteristic of Barley there. I mean, I thought about this movie hard, and the thing with Barley, he's all about hiding his insecurities with confidence, and his insecurities is of the fact that he did not truly get a good send-off with his dad when his dad was like on his deathbed and so forth. And so now he feels kind of guilty about the fact that he wasn't brave enough to go in and say goodbye to his dad. So now he's trying to compensate for that by being overly brave, which is really overconfidence. And yeah, I mean, I guess technically if you want to go off on a limb, it does sound kind of smug, but it's not like it's completely insufferably, oh, I'm much better than you. Bow before me, peon, kind of smugness.
Justified why his character was the way he is, and as you just articulated. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Ian also is good character. I've always, from the very get-go, I love this movie for the fact that it's a brother trying to fill in the figure of being a surrogate father figure to his younger sibling. It's something that I kind of relate to a certain extent because I'm not going to reveal too much as far as my family history goes, but there has come to a point in my life of where that I almost feel a little bit like, as the eldest sibling of my siblings, I have to like fill in somewhat of at least one of the functions of a father figure, and that being like giving driving lessons to one of my upcoming siblings who is getting to that age, you know.
Right.
Yeah, and it's definitely relatable in regards of my grandpa. Like, I don't think I'm revealing too much, but my grandpa, his dad, died before he hit 18. And so his eldest brother had to go in and fill in those shoes of being a father figure to him. So it's definitely something heavily relatable to me. And whatever negative things, negative nitpicks I could think about with Onward are not near enough to bring it down. I mean, maybe it would have been kind of cool to have some kind of villainous wizard character for them to fight or whatever, but that would have been like a good bonus, but it's not like it's actually needed for me to truly like the movie or anything like that. I still like it regardless. It had some off the wall action and some decent slapstick bits, and overall, just an ultimately heartfelt, good core message that respects both the dynamic of father and son. And it has the couple of kick-ass girl characters for all the feminists to fawn over as well, without it coming at the expense of the men characters. Just to point that out and throw it out there.
Gotcha.
But I think we're kind of winding down a bit on the energy. Maybe, I mean, what do you think, Loudmouth? Do you think you can go on longer, or you want to wrap it up here?
I can go on as long as you can.
All right. Maybe we'll try and speed along. I was planning on karaokeing this evening, but that can wait. We're having a good time.
It's fine.
You know, I think we'll at least get all the way up to Coco and maybe take it from there. Toy Story, good movie, really good movie. I mean,
very, very good. I was a kid when it came out, and yeah, the first computer animated movie ever made.
What are like some like actual detracting flaws that you can think of with the movie?
Well, it's definitely limited by the experimental nature and the technology of its time, for sure. Like the human characters look kind of really weird. It's why the camera doesn't focus on them very much.
Yeah.
And of course, how ridiculous it is that the toys run throughout the street in the middle of broad daylight, but apparently nobody sees them.
Oh, that actually is a fairly decent plot hole to mention about the movie.
That's a plot hole in all the Toy Story movies. It's absurd no one ever sees them move. They constantly do so. They constantly are doing shit right in front of people, but they're always just happen to be looking the other way.
Yeah, and as far as flaws go, I mean, I definitely don't agree with this, but the thing Shafrella has like mentioned is that he thinks that Woody is a little bit too mean-spirited. And it's like, yeah, kind of the point.
Yeah, it's relatable, particularly if it's a kid's movie, because Woody's flaw being envious over someone new. You can almost see it kind of similar to a kid who gets like a new baby brother or something and is envious that he's getting all the attention that they used to get.
But something that everybody agrees with is that Toy Story is an absolute comedic riot. Like, yeah. I cannot... I don't think there's anybody on Earth who can realistically go seriously watching this movie and say it's not funny.
Yeah. Man, the dolls must really go for you.
It's like, how dare you touch a spaceman's helmet on an uncharted planet? My eyeballs could have been sucked from their sockets.
May I add just what an... I know this is backtracking a little bit, but what an idiotic decision it was to replace Tim Allen with Chris Evans for Lightyear. No one other than Tim Allen should voice Buzz Lightyear as long as he's alive.
Yeah, you know, at first I thought Chris Evans was a decent or substitute for Tim Allen, but the more I think about it, Chris Evans plays the part too seriously. Good old Tim Allen knows how to be comedic. Naturally comedic, as opposed to Chris Evans.
Played that character perfectly. He kind of takes himself. He takes like he's obviously very silly, delusional past that didn't really exist all so seriously,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous, and that's what makes it funny.
One question I had to ask you, Loudmouth: who had the biggest character arc of the movie, Woody or Buzz?
You could definitely argue Buzz goes through a much more dramatic arc. I mean, he essentially has memories of an alternate universe where he was a fucking space ranger who flew the galaxy and what was a galaxy revered hero, only to find he's actually a sentient piece of plastic being played with by a kid who will eventually grow up and throw him away.
Right. You know, I think I wholly agree.
And I guess the way it works in this world is he's born with the memories of like his character. Does that work with most toys? It's what is it? Do like Jurassic Park toys, for example, like have memories of like being on the island, and all that kind of trauma before they like wake up in a kid's room as a piece of plastic or something?
Yeah.
Or like Han Solo toys, do they have memories of being Han Solo? Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some decent bit of world building with Toy Story, but it is a little bit of plot hole. And rewinding back to Toy Story 4, I mean, I honestly did not think that Forky was a funny enough character in Toy Story 4. I guess I can grant that as a pro to the movie. But one thing that I think that the EFAP podcast mentioned as a decent point was how does this work? Like suddenly, if you like put eyeballs on something, does it just automatically become a sentient toy all of a sudden?
Makes as much sense as anything else in this universe.
If you put eyeballs on a car, will it become sentient all of a sudden?
I don't know, man. The Toy Story universe never really has made any logical sense if you really think about it.
Maybe it's something that they should not have really touched upon in Toy Story 4. I know that on paper it sounds like a cool idea to explore, but it almost opens up a bigger can of worms of plot
I
holes
think it
than
really
anything
worked.
else.
It worked because it kind of pointed out the fact that kids are kind of specially attached to something if they build it themselves. Forky may be kind of a crappy toy by most standards, but Bonnie has an attachment to it because Forky's something she built herself, whereas a toy that comes up to them wrapped in a factory doesn't have as much value because they didn't build it.
But what if they had that same attachment to a gigantic life-size teddy bear? You know, those giant life-size teddy bears that take up an entire freaking bedroom corner? Like, do those things have become alive as well? What about, or even cars for that matter? I don't know. Maybe a child does not have as much of an attachment to cars as to a fork that was a preschool handcraft project. But
oh yeah, your car's alive the moment you drive it, and when you change the gear shift, that's like jerking your car off.
also, another thing that's kind of dark to think about. I mean, Toy Story 4. Forky, he might be a toy for right now while Bonnie is actually caring for the toy, but honestly, Bonnie will grow up and not care for Forky a lot sooner than she'll stop caring about Bo Peep, or well, not Bo Peep, because she doesn't have her own Bo Peep. She'll stop caring about Forky long before she'll stop caring about Jessie and just ultimately throw Forky in the trash, be broken apart and all that stuff.
That does seem to be what Forky wanted.
Well, Forky then ultimately came out to not want it anymore eventually. So is he like suddenly against his own will gonna be like thrown away, broken into like 5 different pieces and all that stuff, thrown in the trash, whereas all the other toys that are a little bit more in pristine condition get passed on to other kids to be played with when she's
I can't imagine Forky being passed on to any other kids, that's for sure.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, Forky definitely wouldn't be passed on to any other kids.
Yeah, exactly. So that makes it a kind of a dark concept. Even darker than the idea of Buzz and Woody getting buried with Andy in his casket. You ever seen that little meme run around the internet?
Yeah, that's so dark.
Yeah. But anyway, next up on the docket is Coco. I put it like just in the top of the good category.
I think it's one of their best. It's a magnificent movie.
Yeah, and I really liked it when I first watched it. I think that a decent point pointed out against the movie is why didn't Ernesto just tear apart the photo of whatever his name, the great great granddad of Miguel, so that he could like
Hector.
what?
Hector.
Hector, yes. So why didn't he just rip up and throw away the picture of Hector instead of putting it in his pocket? That would have like completely stopped Miguel from like pursuing him and all that stuff. Would have like made the villain ultimately successful. But not only that, and I don't know, it wasn't as funny as a whole lot of other movies. I don't remember. I like the core message about finding out about your family lineage successfully. That was
that not only that, but I like its message that if you make a mistake, if you make a bad decision, you might not be able to take it back. Hector, if you remember, he makes a bad decision to leave his family, and he was trying to reverse it. He was trying to like go back to them, but he was murdered before he could.
Yeah. Did you like check out the one video that I linked to you in Twitter DMs of the one guy reviewing
no,
it?
I haven't watched the whole thing. Sorry.
Okay. Well, he makes up a fair point about how the family is kind of abusive to Miguel, and the fact that they like destroy his toy in front of his guitar more specifically in front of his own eyes for like no particularly good reason. Like
I mean,
the rest of
yeah, but at the same time, though, most of his family doesn't support his grandma's actions, and even she seems to regret it after.
Yeah, seems to regret it after.
Just something she did out of anger, you know.
But
she was right. You could argue it was kind of a vicious thing to do. But you know, some like grandmas can be really harsh sometimes.
Yeah. The point that the reviewer seems to point out though is that it almost seems to be like for practically no particularly good reason why she does it. And I don't have to,
just because he was defying her.
I don't necessarily like agree with the reviewer. Like I do think that theoretically there was like a fairly reasonable reason as to why that she ultimately does do that, and it's that her granddad was killed off because of music.
Yeah, she sees her grandson going down that path and basically sees it as a dark path, and something in her life feels the need to nip it in the bud. Doesn't make her actions right. I'm just saying it was an act that she perceived as loving, even if it was definitely over the line.
But I guess that the point that I have to think about in regards to that review is that it would have been nice if there was more connected tissue for that message, like maybe a little bit more of an explicitly explained scene showing us to how that the grandma ultimately knows about this information. Whereas as is, it seems almost on the surface level, anyways, like she's just doing it just for almost nothing. But I don't know. It's still a good movie at the end of the day. Remember me.
Saw throughout that his grandma was kind of a household tyrant, kind of like was very much someone who wanted to keep everyone in line. And some like old people can be like that. Some of them could be like really controlling because they feel like they've earned it at their age.
Yeah.
Sorry, a lot of old people are like that. I remember this one sad video where you had this near 68, 70, a 69-year-old woman being berated by her 95-year-old mother-in-law. It was kind of felt bad for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, her 95-year-old mother-in-law is just constantly berating her. You don't do anything right. Yeah.
So, next up, I'm just gonna try to power through all these movies and my thoughts on them.
Or we can stop wherever. It's fine. Or you want to talk Luca? Yeah, I liked Luca. It honestly feels like it reminds me of a Miyazaki movie, actually. That's what I liked about it.
It's a bit of a slice of life kind of movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it. Not one character that I disliked. I kind of would have wished that they would have expounded a little bit more on the one uncle who was like from the deeper parts of the ocean, who's like transparent. They only have like the one scene about him. He was like a very eccentric, and I personally would have liked to see him, but the movie is like good as is. Do you think that I have it ranked a bit too high though?
Having it above Coco is madness in my eyes, to be honest. And above Toy Story and above, yeah, Onward, yeah, I'd rank it below almost all the movies except maybe Cars in their previous tier.
Hmm.
That's just me though. It's your opinion.
Sure. I guess the more I think about it, it isn't like quite so excellent. Like it has a very simplistic message, and it has a bit of a simplistic, albeit entertaining, but still simplistic villain. But it's just a nice little comfort food to snack on, as to quote Shea Frillas and his commentary about
Yeah,
bug life.
I like I said, I enjoyed Luca quite a bit. I definitely thought it was a nice and cute little movie, but it didn't really do that much for me.
Maybe I'll have to think about this tier list a lot better. I also like the dad, and yeah. Anyway, I think I'll just move on. Cars 3, though.
I'm kind of surprised you put that so high. I mean, that one I thought I enjoyed that it had a more adult theme of retirement. That seems to be a smart way of the movie kind of growing with its audience, I guess.
I guess it definitely was. I guess I definitely felt something closer to the message of Cars 3 about its found legacy, how it seems to highly respect Doc Hudson, unlike how Disney Star Wars seems to disrespect Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, definitely. It seemed like a loving tribute to Paul Newman, who
It
passed
was.
away like a little over a year after Cars came out.
It
But he still
also.
apparently it's some dialogue that he recorded.
It also had a little bit more of a smooth transition, going from master to pupil, more so than again Luke and Ray in Star Wars: Last Jedi.
Oh
Maybe
yeah, absolutely. Oh, that'll agree 100%.
maybe the biggest reason why I have it ranked so high is because relativity. You know, the general rule and theory of relativity, and that applies in regards to this movie to my feelings on Last Jedi. So yeah, but I guess my thoughts about it are all the same as Shea Frilla's, but there is one thing that I kind of disagree, and that is in regards of the villain. He thinks that the villain is pretty boring, and especially in comparison to Chick Hicks. But I think that's what actually kind of makes him better, though, is that the villain in Cars 3. Although to be fair, I cannot remember his name right now. Maybe that's why he isn't as good as Chick Hicks. But the fact that he was like so subtly and underhandedly manipulative to his peers around him just makes him a whole lot more of a realistic villain than Chick Hicks from the first Cars movie. I mean,
which could be another way of like this movie grows with its audience.
Yeah, I mean,
whereas it felt like Cars 2 was basically more of a kids movie than the first one was. This feels more of an adult movie than the first one does.
Yeah. I mean, how many characters do you come across in your life who are always obnoxiously like Kachuga, as comparison to the Cars 3 villain?
I mean, childhood bullies do act like that, but adults, no, usually not.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose you'll find plenty of like douchebags who will underhandedly like gaslight you into doubting yourself so that they can get their way.
Right.
But then above that, I have Inside Out 2. Maybe it's mostly because I've watched Inside Out 2 more recently than Cars 3, why I feel putting it above that. But regardless, maybe I should put Cars 3 a little down lower, but I think we can all agree that Inside Out 2 is at least better than Cars 3.
Yeah, I'll agree. And Up is like one of the best movies of all time. I have no idea how you could rank anything above it.
Maybe because biggest reason being Syndrome. Maybe because I did not find the villain as strong as villains like Randall or Waternoose or Syndrome. And Toy Story 2, even though Charles Muntz might be a stronger villain by himself in comparison to any of the villains in Toy Story 2, at least Toy Story 2 had the combination of 3 villains that were fairly well fit together in its movie. That they mixed those villains together, as well as Puss in Boots: The Last Wish did with its 3 villains. Well written, as opposed to it looking like a mess like in Spider-Man 3.
But goddamn, the way the movie portrays the personality of a dog, the dynamic between Russell and Carl in that movie, just
Yeah.
absolutely superb writing. The first 10 minutes are just absolute filmmaking perfection.
I will say, I mean, you have to give me at least this credit here, Loudmouth. I at least give more credit to Up because the bird doesn't annoy me as much. Russell definitely doesn't annoy me as much as Schaefer does. So therefore, I have it ranked to like a lot higher than Schaefer does. Schaefer has it like somewhere in this
Yeah,
lineup right here.
Russell's annoying because he's a kid. Kids are kids act like that. I mean, Russell's personality was incredibly realistic for a kid his age.
Yeah, and I thought that
if you hate Russell, I can only conclude you just hate children and don't want to see them realistically represented on screen.
Let me say this. He was the just right amount of annoying for me to find him realistic enough, but not too annoying to where I want to choke him like with anxiety and Inside Out 2. That's with me though.
Yeah. The way he's portrayed, he just wants to do right, and his motivation for it is really fantastic. He sees that his dad is distant from him, and he has this kind of delusional view that if he like gets that badge, that his dad will spend more time with him, which is obviously completely delusional, but it makes perfect sense from the mind of a child.
Plus, I still to this day cannot get over of how good that the writing is with the Up of where how that they executed the part of where that Russell goes explaining that facet of his relationship with his dad, and of how that Phyllis thinks that he goes on to Mr. Fredrickson saying, Phyllis thinks that I should just leave him alone, and Fredrickson is all like, you call your mom by her first name? Phyllis is not my mom. Oh, as opposed to, giving too much exposition of him saying, Phyllis is not my mom. Phyllis is my dad's new wife or whatever. No, they just heavily imply that in the most clever way possible. And I like that out of a kid's movie like this.
And I also adore the fact that Carl gets to, essentially through accidental circumstance gets to be a surrogate father for this kid.
Exactly.
All right. And keep in mind, Carl's arc, you saw as a young man, he wanted to be a father. When Ellie was pregnant, he was incredibly overjoyed. And then when she had that miscarriage and couldn't have any more kids, it was devastating for them both. So
exactly.
So and essentially now, thanks to this kid stoling away on his in his house, he essentially gets to be a surrogate father for this kid.
So yeah, a lot of great about the movie. Probably the only thing holding it down for me in comparison to other movies is the villain. In fact, let me rearrange some things. Inside Out, the first one, I don't think we have a whole lot to talk about that we didn't talk about earlier when we were like directly talking about Inside Out 2.
Yeah.
But Inside Out, when I first watched it, I always thought it was a joy to watch. Like, yeah, there's the flaw in regards to the plot holes. I mean, the world building plot holes are a little bit more blatant in this than with even Toy Story for that matter. Like of how that the construction workers to prank the emotions will just send like the bubblegum commercial tune up.
Yeah, that joke is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
I mean, it was a funny gag by itself, but at the same time, makes one go wonder, why didn't Joy and Sadness just send the core memories back to headquarters by using that contraption there? But they didn't, so it just is all like, that was dumb. But otherwise, it's a great movie. And I always liked the fact that at the end of the movie, Joy, she does something that's kind of uncharacteristic to herself. And what did I really like about these two movies, Inside Out 1 and 2, is Joy, her usual self, is to be overly happy, but when she knocks out of her usual personality, it gives more weight to when that she gets serious. And at the end of Inside Out, she starts to reminisce on all the memories of Riley, of how that she failed a hockey game, but then gets supported by her friends and whatnot. It just shows through, and it shows this through visuals instead of overly broad exposition.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, I think the gag where like Riley bumps into that other boy and goes into his mind, and they're all panicking. Girl. that was hilarious.
That was funny too.
That was
Inside Out,
fucking hilarious.
both Inside Outs are probably the funniest of all of Pixar's category, I will say.
I don't know. Actually, the Monsters Inc. actually is the biggest laugh in any Pixar movie. The gag at the end. Oh, another gator got in the house. Not a gator. Give me that shovel. No matter how many times I've seen that movie, that joke always makes me laugh. It's just fucking funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like of how that the movie goes showing through the visualizations of how that you need some amount of sadness to I don't know. There's a whole lot to analyze with it, but what do you think? Does sadness help? Like, I mean, true legitimate sadness, not just crocodile tears, but true legitimate sadness helps you to gain more empathy and sympathy from your peers, to where that it can develop into. Okay, yeah.
And that was the point that movie illustrated brilliantly, and that's one of the best. And that was probably the best thing about it. Why I consider it an outright brilliant movie.
Yeah. Whereas you have some people who think that sadness should be, and emotions in general, should be suppressed so much, and that you should just be literally all happy
emotions
all the time.
Right? We're bottled up emotions.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm wondering, in the Inside Out universe, how does suicidal depression work? Does sadness basically knock out all the other emotions and then commandeer the ship over a cliff?
Probably. I mean, it'd definitely be something interesting to explore, but that had to be for a more adult Inside Out.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. If you go to, like I said, they should make the R-rated adult version of it, but Inside Out, but it's in a grown man's mind, and half of it's porn.
I wouldn't go that far, but I think that with the third Inside Out, maybe they should do something.
I'm joking, obviously.
Ambitious, and maybe make it almost PG-13-ish that tackles a topic of suicidal depression.
I obviously was joking. I know Disney never would make that. I was joking around.
Fair enough. But yeah, great movie. Do not try to be happy literally all the time. It's just a recipe for disaster, and you'll start cracking at the seams into being like a bit of an emotional wreck, the same way that Riley was when she just stormed off onto the bus, almost feeling empty.
Yeah.
But anyway, WALL-E. What do you think, Loudmouth?
Pretty great movie.
Would you personally call it like the top 6? One of the top 6?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's Pixar's really only successful science fiction movie. Lightyear was another attempt at science fiction, and wasn't really too successful in my eyes, but WALL-E was incredibly successful. I think I commented on the trailer for an upcoming movie, The Wild Robot, that I got vibes from The Iron Giant and WALL-E from it, and I'm hoping it lives up to those.
Yeah, I do think it's a pretty interesting. This is going to be DreamWorks' first ever sci-fi movie, right? Wild Robot? I mean, I guess there was Mr. Peabody and Sherman, which is a time travel movie, but
I wouldn't call that sci-fi. But
huh?
This is, well, even this though, I mean, it definitely has kind of fantasy elements. Like the animals are seem a bit anthropomorphized, and the robot supposedly can translate them into speech. And obviously, that wouldn't really work because animals don't really have a language of any kind that like a machine can translate. They don't communicate that complexly.
It definitely looks like a cute enough movie that I'll definitely be watching in the future, and it definitely looks like it's having the same kind of slightly lit around the edges, almost comic book style kind of artistry, animation style, the same way that Puss in Boots: The Last Wish does.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I just the scene with the duck was phenomenal. He rescues is the baby duck and seems to raise it to adulthood, and then watches it fly away. I'm like, this trailer is only a couple minutes, and this is already emotionally gripping stuff.
I will say one thing that again back to WALL-E. One thing that It's been years since I watched Wall-E. Out of all the Pixar movies I need to rewatch, probably Wall-E is probably the one the most I have to rewatch. But
well, I think what's best about Wall-E though is how well it gets the characters' emotions and personalities through, even though he doesn't speak, or there's very little dialogue in the first half, and he's also very limited in his facial expressions. He doesn't have a mouth. He just has two kind of camera eyes, and yet they find a way to always make him expressive and always know how he's feeling.
You can
That
definitely
really
tell that
takes
the
some
creators
talent on the part of the animators.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that the creators took some major inspiration from R2D2. Another robot with a lot of personality, even though he's not able to emote technically a lot.
Right.
I don't know why, but I think that the character that I liked the most out of the whole movie was the captain. Of how he's like this careless, absolute bumbling fat buffoon to becoming like a character with more of a spine as he stands up to Otto. Especially when
that also was a great arc, but he you realize is we look at what we become fat couch potatoes because we've been relying on automation to live our lives. There's a lot of really great commentary, kind of similar to Idiocracy in that regard, in terms of its witty commentary on the future.
Yep. And so already talked about Toy Story 3. You think it's the best out of all the Toy Stories?
Yes.
All right. I mean, it's a movie that I can barely say has any flaws in it at all. Like probably the side characters, quite honestly, get to shine, more than ever in this movie, even in comparison to Toy Stories 1 and 2. Definitely 4.
It has probably the best villain of any Pixar movie.
Probably. Although I think Syndrome would be somewhere on the level of Lotso if he had control of an entire nation or something like that.
Lotso, though, was a brilliantly written villain.
That would probably like the only one villain that I could understandably be an exception to Syndrome being like the greatest villain of all Pixar. I don't know. I just personally think like Syndrome better because he's like generally more entertaining. But Lotso at the same time still has like a little bit of a warm, charismatic personality. Now, on top of him being absolutely viciously slimy and psychopathically evil, he also is so well written to, on the other hand, have a bit of a warm, attractive personality to him that it just makes him welcoming at first until you find out what his true motivation is, you know?
Yeah. Something changed that day inside Lotso. Something snapped.
Yeah, and in regards of like all these old curmudgeon characters, you also have the telephone who's like always going on, they won't break me. I'm sorry, cowboy. They broke me. And then, of course, the clown played by Bud Lucky. Is that the name of the guy? Bud? Something like that. He voices like the old agency guy in The Incredibles too, I believe. And
Michael Keaton also was great as Ken in the movie. I loved his performance.
Oh yeah, honestly, this is my Barbie. Is Toy Story 3 Barbie? At first, I did not like Barbie, but the more I go thinking back on her, I think, especially in a world of where that we have freaking I can't remember her name, but where we have Harley Quinn Barbie. Definitely far superior Barbie in Toy Story 3 than in the actual titular Barbie movie.
Yeah. Barbie and Ken, their dynamic in that movie was absolutely great. Actually, and the ending was also fantastic, and mostly from Andy's perspective. Even though from his perspective, they're all inanimate. Him giving up these toys to this kid is essentially him leaving childhood behind and growing up, and him having an emotional moment over that, and that's fantastic.
Such a bittersweet moment indeed.
So,
but now that you mention it, I think that might be the one slight flaw that I personally have with Toy Story 3 is how that Ken is a little bit overly pathetic, and I realize that's for comedy value, and that's fair.
It fits him perfectly because he's a girl's toy.
And ultimately, yeah, I can definitely accept that. But I guess I said that they did Barbie better in Toy Story 3 than in Barbie, but at the same time, Barbie did Ken better than Toy Story 3, at least by what I've seen of all the memes and all the clips and everything like that.
Right.
It's like the old switcheroo.
And I love the other toys teasing him for being a girl's toy. I thought that was funny as hell.
Yeah. And Buzz Lightyear is great in Toy Story 3. He's mostly gagged for how he's like Spanish like talking character. He's a bit of a different character, a bit of a ladies' man more than he ever was before. And but I think I slightly like him better in Toy Story 2 than in Toy Story 3. Though I will credit Toy Story 3. The idea of their most valuable asset, the most valuable member of the team, that being Buzz Lightyear. He's like the strongest, most agile, and most quick, mindfully on his feet kind of character out of all the characters, all the good guys in the Toy Story cast. And yet he gets mind controlled and turned on them. That is pretty intimidating as a concept, and it is very well executed in Toy Story 3 as he's just this almost like a evil officer of Lotso now.
Right.
For a point. Yeah, I don't think I have anything more to say. It is a great movie, just not quite great enough for me to like it more than the next few movies.
Uh-huh.
Actually, maybe I do like it slightly better than Monsters Inc. But Monsters Inc. Probably the greatest part about it is John Goodman's performance as Sully, for one. Not to mention it having some of the greatest villains in Pixar canon, Waternoose and Randall. Randall being like the more in-your-face, megalomaniacal kind of...
Steve Buscemi gave a fantastic performance as Randall. I loved him. It's kind of like Fargo for kids.
And Waternoose, he has a little bit of a similar charm to him in the same way of Lotso's charm. He's not quite as evil as Lotso, I don't think, although he gets a kind of a high up there.
I mean, he was planning on kidnapping children. There was a deleted scene in the movie where Sully would like enter a room full of empty cages.
Oh. Well, wouldn't it have been great to have seen that scene on screen?
Yeah.
But probably one of the things that is strongest about Monsters Inc. though is probably the surrogate, almost father-daughter relationship between that of Sullivan and Boo. I think it's even stronger than Finding Nemo and with Marlin and Nemo. I think it's stronger than May and her dad in Turning Red. Stronger than Merida.
There was a brief period where they thought that Pixar and Disney would separate before Disney outright bought Pixar in 2006. And there was a plan to make sequels to Pixar movies without Pixar. And did you look up their plans for Monsters Inc. 2?
No, I did not.
Very interesting what they had planned. This one was not going to be a prequel. It was going to be a sequel set a year later. And basically, they rebuild the door to get to see Boo again. When they go in there, they see an old woman sitting in Boo's place. And they're kind of confused. And they try to they eventually have enter the human world and go through like a various happenstance adventure. And then the twist at the end was going to be kind of dark. They was going to reveal that apparently time works differently in the monster world than it does in the human world. And that old lady was Boo. That over the year between the two movies, several decades passed in the human world.
Now that you mention it, I do think I remember watching a video talking about this.
Yeah, and it was going to end with Sully visiting Boo on her deathbed as a 90-something-year-old woman, and she'd recognize him before dying. And she'd say, "Kitty." What do you think if they had done that?
I'm floored.
Huh?
I said I'm floored.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, though, is the other Pixar sequels that Circle 7 Pictures were planning to make, they all look terrible, and I'm glad they were never made. But that one actually looks interesting. There was a plan for a Toy Story 3 that was going to be set very shortly after Toy Story 2 with Andy still a kid, and it was all going to have Buzz Lightyear recalled to Taiwan, and he would meet other recalled toys. That honestly sounded like a shitty movie, and I'm glad it was never made.
Yeah, But yeah, like the ending for Monsters Inc. is bittersweet enough to where that Buzz Sully, he gets a reunite with Boo, and Boo is all like kitty, and Sully just simply smiles so brightly.
Well, if
But
time does work differently in the monster world than it does in the human world, then that would kind of explain a few things. One, it would answer the question of where were Boo's parents during her escape. But if time works differently, then she was only in a room for a few minutes, and it would make sense that her parents never would have known she was gone. And two, it would kind of make sense for why monsters have appeared in human legends throughout all of history, like that they've basically been doing this for in their company for like only a few decades, but for humanity, it's been thousands of years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting idea, which obviously when Pixar got the rights to their characters back, they obviously went in a very different direction. And as much as I like Monsters University, I kind of wish they had done something a bit more bold like that.
So yeah, mentioning about it, Monsters Inc. probably has like some of the strongest world building in all of Pixar, as long as they don't go delving too much into the science of how the teleportation works. They're totally solid and fine.
Or how the fact that human screams apparently can be a form of energy in this world somehow.
Yeah.
They have to think of a justification for why these monsters are going into rooms and scaring people, and they probably couldn't think of anything better.
Yeah. Next on the docket, Toy Story 2. I always loved Toy Story 2, and it will always be one of my top favorites. And I think another reason as to why that I like it better than Toy Story 3 is because it's just in general more lighthearted than Toy Story 3. And so Toy Story 3 definitely has a better, I think, core message as far, and definitely a better ending than Toy Story 2. But the Toy Story 2, if I went to watch a Toy Story movie that is just for pure, unadulterated fun, I would go for Toy Story 2. Like the interactions.
Pure unadulterated fun. It has some good drama involving Jessie and her previous owner growing up and outgrowing her, and Woody kind of just coming to the realization that the same thing will happen to Andy. You know, he's eventually going to grow up and forget about me.
That too. I like the developing brother-sister relationship between Woody and Jessie. I like the fight between Buzz versus Buzz. I mean, it's cool. Like they already set up Buzz as a pretty cool character in Toy Story, and it's kind of funny. There's almost seems to be a certain science to, like, you take a franchise's coolest character and you pit him against no one but himself. It's like Batman versus Batman.
Well, they do have Zurg there, and honestly, that whole sequence was hilarious.
Yeah, you have Buzz versus Buzz, Buzz versus Zurg, and of course, freaking Al is a pretty funny, eccentric character.
Yeah,
it's funny to see how he gets pushed around and made look pathetic. Sorry, what?
Yeah. Wayne Knight voices Al in Toy Story 2, but he appears again in Buzz Lightyear of Star Command as the voice of Zurg, and he's funny in both. Wayne Knight in both roles, and he's funny in both.
That is hysterical. It's poetic.
Yeah, even though a few jokes that slipped by in that show actually were kind of risque for a kids show. There was one where XR is like asleep and they wake him up, and XR is a robot character. He wakes up and says, "No, Your Honor, I swear I had no idea she was under warranty." Like, damn, that's a dirty joke for a kid's show.
And of course, one of the most quotable and fun villains in Pixar would have to be Stinky Pete. He's all like, "I tried reasoning with me, Woody, but you forced me to take these more extreme measures."
Yeah, Kelsey Grammer voiced Stinky Pete. Fantastic performance.
Fair? I'll tell you what's not fair. Spending a lifetime on a dying store shelf watching every other toy be sold. Well, finally, my waiting is paid off, and no hand-me-down cowboy doll is going to mess it up for me now.
Well, the thing about him, though, is he wasn't really that evil. Certainly, like Lotso in the next movie was way worse than he was. Because essentially his motivations are kind of understandable from his perspective, whereas Lotso was just a straight-up psychopath.
Yeah, especially at the end. Lotso had absolutely no reason to not save the main characters' lives, especially after they just saved his life from the incinerator. But no, he just decided to leave them just because he's that heartless.
Yeah, yeah, fuck him. Yeah, I thought it was gonna give Lotso a redemption arc. I was kind of shocked at how dark they went in that scene, where they don't give him a redemption arc. They said, some people really are just rotten to their core, no matter what. And sorry, he's right. Some people are.
And I'm in full agreement with Shea Frolis Productions that ultimately Pixar should have actually had him killed by the end of Toy Story 3.
They kind of give him a miserable fate, but still, yeah.
Or maybe he's supposed to like rot away all the way down to where he's basically a skeleton version of himself, just tortured to death or something like that.
Yeah, essentially, it's pretty dark fate he gets at the end.
Kinda, but it's more implied than anything shown, so I guess it's not cathartic enough for those of us who hate Lotso.
Yeah, great villain, like terrible person. And I also loved his kind of bitter nihilism about his actions. We're all just trash waiting to be thrown away. That's all a toy is.
Yeah, it's kind of they expounded. Okay, he's like an extension of Stinky Pete because Stinky Pete has a very similar line to that. It's all like, idiots, children destroy toys. You'll be ruined, forgotten, spending eternity rotting in some landfill.
No. There's a big difference though, because with Stinky Pete, he essentially was just trying to do what he thought was right. He thought that that basically being preserved in like a museum was the best fate he could hope for, and essentially that's what he was striving for. He thought the others were just naive fools, but in his mind, he thought he was doing the right thing. So I don't see how his actions were right, even within his mind. He knew what his actions were evil, and he just didn't care.
I'm not saying that
to his core.
I'm not saying that the motivations are the same, but what I'm saying is that the philosophy about how children treat toys like trash, and so therefore kids are hopeless, it's kind of the same in that way between the two characters.
Well, with Lotso though, he doesn't just say children treat toys bad. He says we're all just trash waiting to be thrown away, as in life is meaningless. Essentially, it's a kind of bitter nihilism that like mass killers or like psychopathic criminals engage in. A lot of them just succumb to just utter bitter nihilism and hatred of themselves and the entire world around them.
Now I see where you're going. You're saying that Stinky Pete thinks that there's no value in children, but there is value in being preserved in a museum, whereas Lotso is all like, there's no value in being anywhere or anything.
Yeah, total nihilism at its most ruthless and like heartless.
Wow, this gets even darker the more I think about it. I think I'm gonna move on before I slip into depression more. So, okay. The cherry on top, at least in my opinion, anyways, The Incredibles.
Oh yeah, The Incredibles is awesome. I mean, I love both The Incredibles movies, but the original is definitely the best. First of all, the second funniest scene in all of Pixar is definitely the "Where's My Super Suit" scene. That is hilarious.
I get too much into like reenacting that scene with my siblings.
Where is my super suit?
What? Just like how that we would like to get into tangents of reenacting the Shrek and Donkey argument of Shrek. Like, oh man, all these scenes are just. All these movies just produce just such good scenes that are just so memorable and quotable and funny. Well, the argument wasn't funny.
Oh yeah,
I digress.
Honestly, that scene's probably Sam Jackson's best acting in his entire career.
Yeah.
Or he could have said, "What woman? Do you see a sign that says dead a superhero suit storage?" No, because it ain't fucking there.
I do have to say,
dead super suits is not my business.
Frozen is definitely at his best in the first Incredibles as compared to the second Incredibles. Like, second Incredibles, he's still a fairly good supporting character. I like how that he comes to the aid of both the kids, Dash and Violet.
And they
But
still give his wife one line. I love that she's still not shown, and you just hear her voice in the background. Where are you going, ASAP, baby? Back here, ASAP.
exactly.
It's hilarious. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And with the first that is absolutely brilliant. Although I think with the first Incredibles, he is given more screen time to show his coolness factor to him.
Right.
And you go talking about the allegory that the Incredibles is going for, about how that the Incredibles are supposed to be a representation of the nuclear family. The dad's supposed to be the strongest. The woman's supposed to be the most flexible, as she handles like a dozen chores all at the same time. And the son is he's so fast because of the fact that little boys are all zippy and cannot stand still. And the teenage girl having invisible powers and shielding powers is just supposed to show up how that she'll keep to herself. Well, Frozone is supposed to be a representation of that one cool uncle figure who the kids really want to hang out with all the time. So therefore, What do they give him? Ice cold powers.
Yeah.
But yeah, can we just at least admit that despite whatever disagreements or differences we might think about the second Incredibles, the first Incredibles flushes out Mr. Incredible the best.
Oh yeah, it's a quintessential example of a midlife crisis, and even his dynamic with his wife is great. Like how they have a couples fight about directions when on the road. It's all really well written.
I also like of how that the first Incredibles at the same time gives Mrs. Incredible a bit of time to shine when it's her turn to infiltrate Syndrome's island fortress. And the airplane scene is so intense of how that she has the missiles chasing her as Syndrome is just mocking Mr. Incredible being all chained up in the detention facility and all that stuff.
I think my favorite scene with her in the movie is this one where she just kind of looks at her at the mirror at her ass and just says inside.
It's like, why are you sad at the fact that you have such a fat ass? You are blessed, woman.
Yes, you are blessed, woman. Yeah, Brad Bird kind of even admitted he put that in there because he thinks women are overly judgmental of their bodies, whereas men are just like, hey, you look fine. Let's go.
Yep. I do have to say that I like the fact of how that Bob is willing to ultimately work out for himself for his wife. I mean, there's also the fact that the wife is suspecting that he's working out for a different woman, but ultimately Bob's motivations are that he's working out to impress his own wife, to make his wife happier. I do like that. Whereas you have a whole lot of men who will just not care or be just just keep the beer belly, keep the dad bod.
Oh yeah, he gets back into shape, Yeah, the way you started, he's at a job he doesn't like, but he has to stay there to support his family. He's gotten out of shape. All right, this is something so many men can relate to.
Yeah, I also like of how that this movie just gets better with age. There was a few weeks ago I watched this with my older sister, and we both commentated about how that how that when you're younger, you just want to get to the action sequences and all the funny parts of Incredibles 2 and Incredibles, the first one, in Act 2 and Act 3. But as you grow older, you start to understand some more of the subtext of the first Incredibles. I always was kind of bored and never really caught the conversation between the agent guy and Bob. I can't remember the agent guy's name right now, but still, how he's all do you not see how frustrated I am with how that I always have to cover your ass? We have to pay to keep the company quiet. We have to pay for damages. We have to pay to neuralize everybody. Every time it gets harder. Money, 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 money. We cannot keep on doing this, Bob. As I grow older, I understand that conversation more. He always has to and what has been happening in the past as well. It was never explicit to me when I was younger that this was an actual repeated pattern with Bob. He always wanted to let out his superhero personality and save the day, but it always got him and his trouble in his family, in trouble.
He clearly has some anger issues, and he's as strong as 50 men. So a guy with a little anger issues can do a lot of damage with his strength.
Yeah. And they were like constantly moving because the government had to keep him and the rest of his family in hiding. Otherwise, the alternative was to completely execute them. But the government wasn't going to do that because Bob, in spite of what damages he'd done, was legitimately a good service overall to the nation and to the city and all that stuff.
Yeah. But another thing about that movie that I think is kind of the most fucked up aspect of it. It's the only movie that Disney has ever made in any of their divisions that has ever had an attempted suicide on screen that Mr. Incredibles prevents, and it presents that as a bad thing that he stopped this guy from killing himself because he gets sued for saving a guy who didn't want to be saved.
Were they actually portraying that as a bad thing, or were they saying that the characters?
Kind of. Not only does he get sued, there's a line where Mr. Crow says, "I saved your life," and the guy says, "You didn't save my life. You ruined my death."
Well, in my opinion, I thought the movie was trying to portray him as a Weasley little asshole, and that Mr. Incredible actually was doing a good thing. The only thing that the guy
look at it that way, but you could argue that Bob would have been through a lot less trouble if he had just let the guy die.
Well, right. I mean, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like, I don't know. There's definitely multiple layers of messaging to analyze with that part of it. I mean, was the movie trying to condone or condemn Bob's actions of saving a guy from killing himself?
Right.
Ultimately, yeah, the guy just needed a therapist. Unfortunately, Bob is not a therapist. All he could do was just prevent him from killing himself, and that's it.
Right.
Of course, one of the best villains. I mean, in my opinion, Syndrome is the best villain of them all. But where would you personally rank Syndrome? Like number
Syndrome
2, right behind?
But like I said, Lotso is the best Pixar villain. No, it's not even close.
Would Syndrome be like at second place or what?
Maybe.
Who would be a possible contender for second place?
Ernesto from Coco? I mean, he was a pretty dastardly son of a bitch, and he doesn't even have the extreme nihilism of Lotso. He just was a selfish asshole.
Yeah,
he is a pretty evil bastard. That guy.
And I guess it's kind of in the same way of Syndrome. I mean, Syndrome was kind of well, I don't know. Was it a matter of selfishness or what core flaw of his personality was there to cause him to slip into this petty, oh, I'm going to kill all superheroes to make them irrelevant kind of thing?
Just kind of being a pet of entitlement. You know, he felt like he was, since this guy, since I was his number one fan, I was entitled to like his time. Even though, again, Bob's entirely justified in his actions, and he even saves the kid's life. Or one scene, remember the guy strapped a bomb to him, and Bob saves this guy. Seems a lot of people Bob saves really stab him in the back for it in that movie. Maybe Bob should stop saving people.
Maybe he should just get just a tad bit more nihilistic to where people really that badly want to kill themselves. Fine, fuck it, whatever.
You know? Yeah, he saves the guy from committing suicide, and the guy sues him. And then he saves this kid from being blown up by a bomb strapped to him, and the guy grows up to be a supervillain that nearly kills his family.
Maybe that's something that was intentional with Brad Bird. He's trying to get the audience to come to their own conclusion on whether, it's a good or bad thing that he saved the suicidal jumper, or, well, actually, I don't know. I think it was ultimately a good thing that he tried to save Buddy. Like, it's not like he could predict the future on what he would have turned out to be. He just saw a dumb kid who ultimately he thought could come out to be a really good person at the end of the day, who definitely doesn't deserve death. So I'm going to save his life.
Right.
But I mean, it kind of bites him in the ass. Now he's all like, you know what? I should have let the bomb kill you. I now realize that. But he couldn't predict that.
Yeah, later he just throws a car at Syndrome and kills him.
Yep. And thus karma comes back to bite him in the ass.
And also the whole joke about capes. It does. There's a whole montage of superheroes dying because their capes got caught and shit. No capes.
Yeah, I was trying to like build up to that, but you said it, Loudmouth. You said it.
No cares.
One thing that kind of frustrated me in recent weeks is that I actually had a friend say that Brave was like a 10 out of 10 movie and said that even the villain in Brave, and I said something in response to that. You were essentially saying that Brave was funnier than Toy Story 2, had better world building than Zootopia, and it had a better villain than that of The Incredibles. And she said, yes.
I'd give Brave as like a 7 out, maybe 8 out of 10 movie if I were generous.
That is very generous, too generous.
Maybe 7 out, 7 out of 10. I think is where I'd go.
Yeah. But I mean, there's one thing that you and I can both agree: like, Mordu is not near as good a villain as Syndrome, right?
No, absolutely not. I do with Brave. I do wonder if Brenda Chapman had completed the movie to her vision, what would this movie be?
Maybe, possibly, Brenda Chapman would have actually given some more lines to Mordu. Maybe she would have made Mordu a talking evil bear who, like, espouses his villainy. Because that's the biggest reason why I can't say that Mordu is, like, a better villain than Lotso or Syndrome or Ernesto, is because he's just a growling force of nature. I mean, yeah, there's the violent past that he had of where that he did kill a lot of people, but on screen, it's not like he's, like, espousing all his megalomaniacal villainy, all of his nihilism and psychopathy. I mean, at the points that we are in the movie, he's just basically a naturalistic bear is all. He's not even really that evil at the end of the day because the king that was Mordu is no longer existent. His
that he's just an animal by that point.
Exactly. His personality is just replaced just an animalistic bear.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if like Brenda Chapman had total creative freedom, like what would she have done with this movie? Like, I mean, this is the woman who gave us intense moments, like, oh my son, they were only slaves.
Yep. Unfortunately, that we do not live in that kind of reality, so therefore, I have to say conclusively that Mordu is one of the weakest villains in all of Pixar canon. Sorry, not sorry, and everybody who says otherwise, I'm usually not an arrogant person, but I am confident to say you are just wrong. Say that.
I still think Brave is pretty good, ish. It's good. It's just not great. It could have been better.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that are arguable with Brave that I think people can debate with me as far that are good things about Brave. But if you go so far to say that freaking Mordu is the best villain in all of Pixar, you're just ridiculous. That's about as bad as saying that the Horned King is a better villain than Scar.
I mean, the Horned King was better designed than Scar. I mean, in terms of having an intimidating design. But yeah, that ultimately isn't really what makes a good villain. Lots of Hugging Bear does not have a very intimidating design. He's a purple teddy bear, but his actions are so fucking evil. He's scarier than a lot of scarier looking villains.
Exactly. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the Pixar ranking. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's been real good. I mean, does it make up for the last live stream, Loudmouth?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry about how that live stream definitely started out, but I'm so glad that we had this chat at least. Anyways, it was definitely a fun stream. A lot of dynamic conversation. We didn't agree on absolutely everything, but that's the way of the game, the way that it goes. Right. But I think that we might have come to at least more of an understanding after this chat.
Yeah, I think so.
But anyway, for all of you who have watched and will watch, thank you very much for checking us out. And I gotta say, go check out Inside Out 2. I don't know.
It's good.
Hopefully, with the box office success of Inside Out 2, that will not embolden Pixar and Pete Docter to say, oh, sequels and prequels and other kinds of spin-offs of already made properties is the one and only way to go. Not new original ideas, but who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, maybe Pixar will never make an original movie again since the Elemental made only $500 million in its entire run. Inside Out to surpass that in like 6 days.
Yep.
So,
But who knows what the future beholds? And Loudmouth, any final words?
power to John Lasseter.
All right, and I will go ahead and dang it, link your video to your review of Monsters University in the description. Everybody check that out after this live stream or whenever, and hope to see y'all later. Good night. God bless. Have a good week.
Bye-bye, everyone.